Chapter 1670. A reminiscent expression appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. That was 63 years ago, and Lin's heart jolted upon hearing this. Xu Honglan and Big Brother Qing had known each other for that long? Su Xiaolan began to recount the story. At that time, the heavenly human tribe hadn't even appeared on the Tai Chu continent yet. The 4-9 Immortal sect wasn't as renowned as it was today, and it was only a relatively outstanding sect. In the main city of the Spirit Sword State, Mengxian City, there was a first-rate dance studio known as the Red Leaf Studio. When Xianyuan Qing was on a mission, he passed by the Red Leaf Studio, and he happened to catch a glimpse of the number 1 dancer in the Spirit Sword State, Ji Honglan's Falling Moon Rainbow Dance. After a simple dance, she had conquered almost everyone present. Xianyuan Qing was also stunned, and he couldn't help but stand up to applaud. Xu Honglan had also noticed Xianyuan Qing. It was difficult not to notice such a handsome man. She smiled at him, flicked her sleeves, and left the arena. Like a fleeting shadow, only the several thousand people in the arena were still reminiscing about that soul-stirring smile. This was the first time Xianyuan Qing and Xu Honglan had met. It was simple and hurried, but it was still very stunning. Xianyuan Qing reminisced about that dance very much, and during his missions in the Spirit Sword State, he would often go to the Red Leaf Studio to admire Xu Honglan's dance. As the number 1 dancer in the Spirit Sword State, Xu Honglan could decide whether or not she danced, as well as when she danced. Some people might not even get to see her dance even once in 10 days at the Red Leaf Studio. Perhaps this was just a coincidence. Xu Honglan appeared almost every day that Xianyuan Qing visited the Red Leaf Studio. However, the two of them didn't interact much. Xu Honglan danced, and Xianyuan Qing enjoyed the dance while drinking wine. But something wasn't quite right. The Red Leaf Studio was a tipping event. Xianyuan Qing was undoubtedly the most tipping event among the spectators. After a dance, a female voice transmission would often sound from the Red Leaf Studio. "Thank you, Xianyuan Qing, for giving dancer Honglan a spirit skin pill. Thank you, Xianyuan Qing, for gifting dancer Honglan a spirit horse. Thank you to Xianyuan Qing for giving dancer Honglan an ice spring spirit flower. Thank you to Xianyuan Qing for giving dancer Honglan a neutron warhead." Yes, the best way to express his appreciation and recognition of the other party's contribution was to reward them. The news that Xianyuan Qing liked to watch the Red Mist dancer dance, and that he spent a lot of money in the Spirit Sword region, caused a sensation, at least in the Spirit Sword region. In an elegant courtyard with unique scenery, an extremely alluring woman with light makeup was stroking a silver-white warhead. She muttered to herself, "What is this neutron warhead? Ah, there are instructions here." The woman in red smiled as she checked the instructions. Then, her smile gradually froze. This is a bomb? Oh my God! The damage range could actually reach a radius of 100 li? On top of that, it doesn't damage buildings and can only inflict lethal damage to living beings? After being modified by spell formations and superparticles, the center of the explosion can even inflict lethal damage to return to void stage mighty figures? This present. The woman blushed as she clasped her hands over her chest, which was rising and falling with excitement. "It's so expensive. It really is too expensive. Big Sister Lon Lon, you've never been as excited as you are today after receiving a present. If you're interested in young Master Xianyuan, why don't you chat with him?" The woman in purple held on to the woman in red's hand with a wide grin. The woman stroking the neutron warhead with a bashful expression was none other than the number 1 dancer in the Spirit Sword State, Xu Honglan. Xu Honglan's blush deepened upon hearing the woman in purple's words. Her cheeks were like a ripe apple, and she gripped the warhead tightly in her soft, delicate hands as if she was feeling quite uneasy. Not only is he the Pavilion Lord of the 4-9 Immortal Sect's Spirit Pavilion, but he's also the young sect leader of the 10,000 Spirits Immortal Sect. He's only here to watch me dance, and he's only here to admire my dance. How could I invite him to chat with me, big sister Lon Lon? How can you look down on yourself like this? The purple-clothed girl glared at the red-clothed woman with a look of exasperation. Shu Honglan's eyes were downcast. Forget it, I only know how to dance. Let me keep my best side to him. I'm not good enough for him. Is this about the Divine Sun sect again? The woman in purple suddenly asked in a cold voice. Shu Honglan's hands trembled slightly, and she pursed her lips tightly, refusing to admit or deny anything. The Divine Sun sect has done countless depraved things. There's not a single good person in their sect. If you ask me, you should just beg young Master Xianyuan to raze the Divine Sun sect to the ground. The woman in purple spoke with an enraged expression. Shu Honglan immediately shook her head upon hearing this. Please don't. The Divine Sun sect has a return to void stage mighty figure among its ranks, and my parents are still in his hands. Ouyang Shu is a fugitive, and if I do anything to betray him, he'll immediately kill my parents. Not only that, but he could even get young Master Xianyuan into trouble. A return to void stage mighty figure might be afraid of the 4-9 Immortal sect and the 10,000 Spirits Immortal sect, but he could easily kill them before tearing open a spatial rift and hiding somewhere on the Taichu continent. Are you just going to let him do whatever he wants? He's going to threaten you with the lives of your parents so that you can continue to be Ouyang Shu's ATM machine and give him money? And he's going to make you marry him soon? Are you willing to do that? The woman in purple robe roared with rage. What can I do? I really don't want to drag anyone down with me. Tears welled up in Shu Honglan's eyes, and she bit down on her lower lip as she looked at the woman in purple. If you're not careful, that psycho will kill you as well, understand? The woman in purple faltered upon hearing this. But I'm not going to just sit here and do nothing. I'm also very unwilling. Shu Honglan gripped the silvery white neutron missile tightly as a determined expression appeared on her face. Days passed by one after another. Xianyuan Cheng would still visit her from time to time. One of them danced while the other enjoyed. Xianyuan Cheng had already completed his mission. He planned to return to the 4-9 Immortal sect after witnessing the final dance. On this day, Mengxian City was filled with red maple trees that were as vibrant as fire. Shu Honglan's red dress was even more dazzling and vibrant than the red maple trees. This was also her final dance for the day. Over 10,000 people at the Red Leaf Theater were eagerly awaiting her performance. A rain of roses fell from the sky. Shu Honglan emerged from the massive red flower bud. Deathly silence ensued. Everyone was entranced by her breathtaking beauty, and they were at a complete loss for words. She hadn't even begun dancing, but she had already won over all of the spectators. She had created a massive stir in the entire Red Leaf Theater. My God, Honglan's dress is way too beautiful. What a beautiful woman with red makeup. Perfect. Don't you think her dress looks like a wedding dress? Haha. It's just a misconception. Xianyuan Cheng was also a little dazed as he stared at the woman on the stage. Shu Honglan glanced at the spot where Xianyuan Cheng was seated, and it was unclear whether she was doing it on purpose or not. In less than a second, Shu Honglan tossed her sleeves into the air, and she was already dancing gracefully to the beautiful melody. This was a solo dance, and it was also her final dance. Her long sleeves danced in the wind, and she was extremely graceful. Her body was imbued with a sense of resistance, and each of her movements was imbued with both strength and gentleness. She was like a wilted flower that had been ravaged by the wind and rain, but also like a stalk of grass that had survived countless disasters. She gave off a sense of adoration, but also a sense of perseverance and determination. Her hair danced in the wind, and her eyes were mesmerizing. A crimson crescent insignia on her glabella gave her a sense of nobility and pride. She was more ethereal than a celestial maiden amid the rain of flowers, and the onlookers were entranced by her beauty. Her exquisite beauty had captivated the entire continent. The applause rang out for a long time. The voice transmission female's voice sounded on the stage again. Thank you, Xianyuan Qing, for gifting dancer Honglan an antimatter yin-yang warhead. Chapter 1671. Everyone's faces convulsed involuntarily. Antimatter yin-yang warhead? What the hell was that? However, the fact that the voice transmission woman was able to identify this item in person indicated that it had to be quite an extraordinary item. In reality, everyone knew that a gift from Xianyuan Qing would definitely be quite extraordinary. However, everyone was still a little envious and jealous at the sight of the enchanting smile on Xu Honglan's face after hearing about Xianyuan Qing's gift. There were many people who had given her gift. However, the only time she had smiled with such sincerity was after Xianyuan Qing had given her that gift. Xu Honglan's dance had stunned everyone, and the rest of the performance was quite bland. The dazzling figure had already disappeared, and Xianyuan Qing also rose to his feet to depart. This mission had come to a successful end at this moment. Please wait, young master. A gentle yet uneasy voice suddenly sounded from behind him. Xianyuan Qing's footsteps faltered, and he turned around with a hint of surprise on his face to look at the woman behind him. The woman wore a red dress, and there was a crimson crescent moon insignia on her beautiful face. Her hands were clasped together nervously, and it was quite clear that she had made a very important decision. Ms. Xu Honglan. A warm and gentle smile appeared on Xianyuan Qing's face. His voice seemed to possess a soothing power, and even the woman's nervous heart was greatly eased by his words. The two of them had maintained a tacit understanding toward one another, and they had never spoken to one another. However, this tacit understanding had been broken by Xu Honglan just as Xianyuan Qing was about to depart. However, Xianyuan Qing didn't seem to mind this in the slightest. His expression was as warm and gentle as if he were looking at an old friend. You, young Master Xianyuan, are you going back? Xu Honglan bit down on her lower lip. Xianyuan Qing nodded with a smile. That's right. I've taken care of everything here, so I'm going back right now. Then you. Xu Honglan looked at Xianyuan Qing, and she wanted to say something, but she suddenly swallowed her words. Have a safe journey, and I hope you'll continue to progress in your pursuit of Tao. Xianyuan Qing smiled and said, You too. I hope you can dance better and better. I'll come back to watch your dance when I have the chance in the future. Xu Honglan's expression dimmed slightly, but she still forced a smile onto her face and nodded. I'll be sure to do it for you if I get the chance. What's wrong? Have you encountered some problems? Xianyuan Qing could sense that something was amiss with Xu Honglan's expression. No, I'm just a dancer. What problems could I possibly encounter? Xu Honglan shook her head. In that case, I'll take my leave first. Xianyuan Qing bowed and left. Xu Honglan also extended a graceful curtsy toward Xianyuan Qing before standing on the spot and looking on at Xianyuan Qing's departing figure, which she yearned for but was also filled with a sense of inferiority, in silence. Such a perfect man, all she had to do was quietly dance a song for him. What else could she ask for in this life? She didn't dare to, and she didn't deserve it. By the way, I really like your dance. The gentle and magnetic voice of a man in a white robe sounded from the distance. Xianyuan Qing didn't turn around. He waved at her before disappearing into a forest of red maple trees. Tears flowed from Xu Honglan's eyes, ruining her makeup. She was even more beautiful than all of the red maple trees in the city, but she was crying like a little child. The only good thing about her was that he really liked her. To her, this was really too good. Perhaps she would be able to become more exceptional in her next life, so that she would have the courage to approach that man. As for this life, Xu Honglan stroked her storage ring, within which lay the neutron missile and antimatter yin-yang missile, both of which were exuding frosty auras. She decided to detonate them first, on the Dragon Breath Mountain in the northern region of Mengxian City. This was a towering mountain with a height of 3,000 zhang and a spiraling radius of dozens of li. At the same time, this was the base of the Divine Sun sect, one of the most powerful immortal sects in the Spirit Sword state. Sect leader Ouyang Shu and Grand Elder Chen Meng were both renowned Return to Void stage mighty figures of the Spirit Sword state. They were extremely proficient in the way of the sword, and they were extremely ruthless and domineering. Their style was revered by many sword cultivators. Of course, if other sword cultivators knew that the Divine Sun sect was the underground monarch of the Spirit Sword state, they probably wouldn't think this way. Burning, killing, pillaging, and distorting the truth was what they were best at. They could annihilate entire sects for treasures, and they could also abduct their loved ones for their beauty, thereby reducing them to tools to vent their lust or to make money. Among these people, the number one dancer in the Spirit Sword state, Xu Honglan, was undoubtedly the most representative. All of the cultivators of the Divine Sun sect were drooling over this alluring flower. It was a pity that sect leader Ouyang Shu had taken a liking to her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to maintain her chastity. Ouyang Shu really liked to elevate a woman to the pinnacle before enjoying her for himself. Xu Honglan's dance yesterday had swept the entire kingdom of the 9 states with envy, and she had become the goddess of countless cultivators. Her reputation was climbing to new heights. It was quite clear that she had reached her most alluring stage. Ouyang Shu issued an order to summon Xu Honglan back and marry her. Within the Divine Sun Palace on Dragon Breath Mountain, sect leader Ouyang Shu and Grand Elder Chen Meng sat on high chairs with powerful sword cultivators standing on either side of the palace. All of them were either arrogant or greedy as they stared at the woman in red. The woman in red made her way over to Ouyang Shu and Chen Meng before extending a slight curtsy. Xu Honglan pays her respects to sect leader Ouyang Shu and Elder Chen. Xu Honglan's voice was gentle and seductive, and she ignored the invasive and scorching gazes around her as she spoke in a calm voice. Ha ha! This woman is quite good. Her body is soft and seductive, and her beauty is top-notch. Chen Meng spoke with an envious expression. The silver-haired Ouyang Shu stroked his chin as a smile appeared on his face. Not only that, but she's the number one dancer in the Spirit Sword state. She has an air of arrogance running through her very bones, and it's a very satisfying feeling to have someone like that under my skin. Everyone swallowed involuntarily upon hearing Ouyang Shu's words. Xu Honglan's beautiful face remained completely expressionless, and she didn't appear to be enraged or humiliated in the slightest. She raised her head and asked, "Sect leader Ouyang Shu, how are my parents doing?" "Don't worry, I'll release your parents from the underground prison on the day of our wedding as witnesses." Ouyang Shu licked his lips as he looked at the woman before him. "As long as you behave well, your parents will be safe." Xu Honglan suddenly chuckled. "So my parents are still in the underground prison. The dungeon is 70 kilometers away from here. I can rest easy now." You're relieved?" Ouyang Shu raised his brows. "Let me give you a present before we get married." At this moment, Xu Honglan had already activated a special protective spell formation. At the same time, she pulled out a silver bullet that was only as thick as an arm. "What is that?" Ouyang Shu's expression shifted as a sense of foreboding welled up in his heart. Grand Elder Chen Meng immediately rose to his feet and made a grabbing motion toward Xu Honglan. This is my dowry, the neutron bullet." Xu Honglan's dress danced in the wind as she tossed a silver bullet toward Chen Meng with a resolute smile. Boom! Boundless energy exploded forth. White destructive energy instantly engulfed the Divine Sun Palace, as well as the gargantuan Dragon Breath Mountain. A thunderous boom erupted, and the heavens were enraged. Shockwaves swept forth for close to 10 kilometers, sweeping up a cloud of dust for over 10,000 feet. Not only did a gargantuan mushroom cloud appear, but the high-energy neutron particles also transformed into destructive white light that pierced through all things, annihilating all living beings. Chapter 1672. The explosion reduced the Divine Sun Palace to nothingness. At the center of the explosion, countless powerful sword cultivators gathered in the Divine Sun Palace were melted into nothingness by the scorching temperatures of the explosion. At the same time, a burst of high-energy neutron particles was unleashed explosively. Not only that, but within the white flames of the explosion, a series of black, high-density, high-mass particles were extremely eye-catching, as if they were blooming in milk. They crashed into a series of invisible strings in the air before being torn apart and pulverized. This was the trump card hidden within the neutron bullet, which was powerful enough to kill return-to-void stage mighty figures. Even though the Divine Sun sect disciples in the distance weren't situated at the center of the explosion, they were still struck by the terrifying particle radiation, upon which their bodies began to decay and die amid blood-curdling wails. A white light rose up from the summit of the mountain like a holy sun, illuminating the entire Dragon Breath Mountain and annihilating all living beings there. A red figure flew out from the smoke and dust. Shu Honglan was knocked flying by the shockwaves in an extremely disheveled manner, and a ball of white light enshrouded her body, which not only kept the scorching temperatures and shockwaves at bay, but also kept all radiation at bay. If it weren't for this protective treasure, she would have most likely died over 1,000 times already. This white jade protective treasure was also a treasure given to her by Xianyuan Qing, and it was part of the neutron bullets set. There was even an explanation on the treasure. Of all the paths, safety comes first. Explosions don't protect themselves. Tears flow down the faces of loved ones. Are they all dead? Shu Honglan wiped the blood from the corners of her lips, completely disregarding her injuries as she stared at the devastating scenes unfolding before her with anticipation and anxiety on her face. She had already formulated this plan after obtaining the neutron bullet given to her by Xianyuan Qing. That's right, she wasn't willing to accept this. She wasn't willing to marry Ouyang Shu just like that. She wasn't willing to let him use her parents' safety as a hostage to ruin her life. When she saw that even return-to-void stage mighty figures could perish to neutron bullets, she came up with this insane plan. She was going to charge into the enemy camp and blast all of them to death. This was her final struggle, as well as her final hope. The energy from the explosion dissipated as quickly as it came. The light gradually dimmed, and the energy also began to dissipate. The protective barrier around Shu Honglan's body crumbled, and she panted heavily as beads of sweat dripped down her flawless features as she stared intently at the massive crater up ahead. Cough, cough, cough. The sound of dry coughing and vomiting could be heard through the smoke and dust. Shu Honglan shuddered with incredulity in her eyes. How did he not die? She could tell that the voice belonged to Ouyang Shu of the Divine Sun sect. The footsteps drew closer and closer, and Ouyang Shu made his way over with a charred and decayed man in his tattered clothes. He was holding a charred man in his hand. It really doesn't work. Is he dead? Ouyang Shu took a glance at Chunmeng, and was silent for a few seconds before tossing it aside. He then turned to Shu Honglan, and a smile appeared on his face. That smile was so ferocious that the rotten flesh on his face split open. You lowly slave, you've worked hard and know how to bite. The man's voice was like a nightmare, and an expression of despair appeared on Shu Honglan's face. Don't worry. I won't kill you. I'm going to torture you slowly, humiliate you for thousands of years, and then throw you into a brothel like a sow. I'll let you be ganged up on by 10,000 people. Isn't that interesting? A sinister smile appeared on Ouyang Shu's face as he dragged his battered body toward Shu Honglan, and his terrifying aura began to climb. He was truly enraged. No one had ever forced him to this extent, and he was going to vent his rage on the woman standing before him without any reservation. The spirit-nurturing stage Shu Honglan was facing the return-to-void stage Ouyang Shu as if she were facing an insurmountable mountain. There was no chance of her winning, unless... The woman in red continued to retreat, and her storage ring flashed as an antimatter yin-yang missile appeared in her hand. Ouyang Shu's body shuddered again as fear and shock appeared in his eyes for the first time. Holy F***ck, you have more? A forlorn smile appeared on Shu Honglan's face as she stood up straight and injected her vital energy into the black and white missile. It's worth it to be able to drag a piece of trash like you down to hell with me. The antimatter yin-yang missile was even more terrifying. However, she had no way of protecting herself this time. This wasn't a power that someone of her cultivation base should possess, and if it were to be unleashed, both she and Ouyang Shu would be blasted into nothingness. This was also the final trump card that she had risked her life to come here. Wouldn't the worst result be death? It was no big deal. No! Ouyang Shu's expression was one of shock and horror as he tried to stop Shu Honglan. However, boundless light had already replaced her frail body, and a terrifying power also erupted forth at this moment. However, the earth-shattering explosion that she was expecting did not take place. Shu Honglan opened her eyes with a stunned expression, only to discover that the antimatter yin-yang bullet had already cracked open, but its energy had transformed into a white protective barrier that enshrouded her entire body, like a pair of warm hands protecting her body. What's going on?" she murmured to herself as she stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before her eyes. This was supposed to be a suicide bomb, so how did it become a barrier that protected her? Could it be that she had opened the missile in the wrong way? Ouyang Shu was also dumbstruck for a moment before chortling with glee. "I was almost fooled by you. So you created a turtle shell to protect yourself? Foolish woman, you won't be able to escape. You're going to fall into my hands sooner or later." An extremely powerful sword projection slashed directly toward Shu Honglan as he spoke. The sword projection was extremely sharp, and even the space around it had been sliced open. Ouyang Shu was a return-to-void stage sword immortal, and a single strike from him was enough to slice through mountains and seas. Now that he was unleashing his full power, he was planning to slice through Shu Honglan's barrier in one fell swoop. Bam! A sharp screeching sound erupted. Ouyang Shu's pupils contracted slightly. The barrier remained completely unmoved in the face of his sword projection. He had been severely wounded, and he could only unleash less than 50% of his original power. However, this was still not something that a mere protective treasure could defend against. It appeared that this woman's protective treasure was quite powerful. Before Shu Honglan had a chance to be surprised, another burst of white light erupted before her eyes. Boom! The air exploded. Ouyang Shu was caught off guard, and he was blasted flying amid a blood-curdling cry. A tall and straight man in a snowy white robe suddenly appeared before Shu Honglan. Shu Honglan faltered upon seeing this. Am I dreaming? She stared blankly at the man standing before her. This was the exact same figure that had been branded into her heart all those years ago. "This missile has the power to protect your body and transmit information, as well as teleport. When I gave it to you, I knew that I would be able to get back to you as quickly as possible in the event that you were forced into a perilous situation. Who would have thought that I would have to use this missile so soon?" Tears instantly welled up in her eyes upon hearing this familiar voice. Xian Yuanqing turned with a warm smile on his handsome face. "Don't worry, no one will be able to hurt you now that I'm here. I'll blast anyone who dares to bully you." Chapter 1673. Shu Honglan felt like she was dreaming. Or rather, she had already been blasted to death, and this was just a hallucination after her death. How could Xian Yuanqing treat her so well? It was almost unreal. "Xian. Young Master Xian Yuan?" Shu Honglan's voice was very feeble, as if she was afraid of disturbing something. The man that she had been yearning for so much had descended from the sky and said, "I'll blast anyone who bullies you." She was at a complete loss as to what to do in the face of such romantic words, fearful that this beautiful dream would suddenly be shattered. The white-robed man nodded with a gentle smile. "I'm here." Xu Honglan's body trembled slightly as she stared at the man before her. At this moment, Xian Yuancheng had already turned and was making his way toward Ouyang Shu. Ouyang Shu crawled up from the ground with blood flowing from his mutilated body as he roared, "Xian Yuancheng! It's you! You actually did it for a mere dancer!" Bam! Pwah! Ouyang Shu didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before a cloud of blood exploded before him. His body was severely wounded again as he flew through the air. I heard from Tong Ling about what happened at the Divine Sun sect yesterday. Xian Yuancheng made his way toward Ouyang Shu atop a yin-yang fish projection. Even under the sun, there are always places where light can't find the light. Places that harbor filth like this have to be cleansed by explosions. Xian Yuancheng waved a hand through the air, and the power of extreme yang surged forth. Boom! The place where Ouyang Shu was situated exploded. However, right at this moment, a peerlessly dazzling sword projection tore through the energy of the explosion before hurtling directly toward him. Xian Yuancheng was just about to evade when he discovered that the space around him had already been frozen in place, and he was completely immobilized. He could only stand on the spot and withstand the sword projection. Ha ha! Xian Yuancheng, no matter how powerful you are, you're still only at the soul formation pinnacle stage. I'm a return to void stage mighty figure who has mastered the power of spatial manipulation. Even if I'm severely wounded, I can still kill you with ease. I'll kill you before getting away. No matter how much suffering I have to endure today, it'll still be worth it. Ouyang Shu chortled with glee as his sword projection fell, slicing a ghastly gash into Xian Yuancheng's body and staining his white robe with blood. Ouyang Shu's eyes lit up with a scorching light. If it weren't for his immortal artifact, Xian Yuancheng would have been cleaved into two. Ouyang Shu didn't waste any time, and he charged toward Xian Yuancheng as a terrifying sword light erupted from his blade again. Xian Yuancheng! Xu Honglan ran toward Xian Yuancheng with all her might. At this moment, the space around Xian Yuancheng began to tremble violently. It was the violent movement of air particles. They were fighting against the confined space. What? A sense of foreboding welled up in Ouyang Shu's heart. Just as he was rushing over, he suddenly discovered that the particles outside of the spatial shackles had begun to tremble violently, followed by an endless burst of light. Boom, boom, boom. Ah! Ouyang Shu was blasted flying again, and he let loose a howl of anguish before tumbling to the ground. At this moment, one of his arms had already been blown away, and blood was flowing relentlessly. The confined space around Xian Yuancheng was also forcibly torn apart by his particle vibrations. He made his way toward Ouyang Shu, and with each step he took, a part of Ouyang Shu's body would explode as he let loose a string of anguished wails. His blood-stained white robe danced violently in the shockwaves from the explosions. Xian Yuancheng's handsome face was extremely cold and calm, as if it had been carved by a knife. It was as if the enemy before him was not an enemy of a higher cultivation base than him, but rather an ant that was about to be stomped to death by him. I really didn't think that there would be such a filthy and ugly sect in the spirit sword state. It's all thanks to Xu Honglan and Tong Ling that I was able to peek into the darkness. When Xian Yuancheng reached Ouyang Shu had already lost all 4 of his limbs and all of his meridians, thereby rendering him completely powerless to resist. I only began my investigation yesterday. Xian Yuancheng's expression gradually darkened. Just from the memories of some of the victims in the underground prison, you've already slaughtered close to 100,000 innocent people and persecuted over 10,000 innocent women. Hee, what a righteous divine sun sect, Han Li chuckled. You're using your immense power and influence to accuse others of crimes and distort the truth. What a joke. The entire sect is filled with evil people, and it's really not easy to gather so many pieces of trash together. Xian Yuancheng shook his head and sighed with emotion. The man on the ground below was still howling with anguish. Ouyang Shu's cells were exploding, and his consciousness was also being torn apart bit by bit as he endured excruciating pain. It was quite clear that Xian Yuanqing didn't want Ouyang Shu to die a quick death. Ouyang Shu's face was filled with despair and boundless agony, and he howled incessantly on the ground, but he was unable to find true release. That's right, he was in so much pain that he would rather be dead than to be killed over 100 times. Xian Yuanqing was going to make him pay for all the pain he had inflicted on the other human beings. He only stopped when Ouyang Shu was on the brink of death and couldn't survive anymore. Xian Yuanqing turned to look at the beautiful celestial maiden Shu Honglan in her red dress, then at the vibrant red maple leaves outside Longxi Mountain, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Then let's go with red. Shu Honglan's heart jolted upon hearing this. Boom! Heaven and earth instantly tremored violently. Red flames exploded on the remaining half of the Dragon Breath Mountain. Ouyang Shu only managed to let loose a final howl of anguish before he was reduced to nothingness by the explosion. Xian Yuanqing's gaze remained fixed on the maple leaves in the distance as he made his way forward with a calm expression. Shu Honglan's heart rate accelerated as she stared at the man making his way toward her. Real men never turned around to look at explosions. This scene was really cool. Shu Honglan quickly realized that this was not the time to be starry-eyed, and she hurriedly rushed forward before extending a hand toward the massive sword wound on Xian Yuanqing's chest. Even she didn't realize that her hand was trembling uncontrollably. Young Master Xian Yuan, your wound, it's nothing. It's just a minor injury. Xian Yuanqing swallowed a spirit pill with a smile on his face. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have been injured. Shu Honglan lowered her head with a guilty expression. What are you talking about? If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to get rid of this malignant tumor. I should be thanking you instead, Xian Yuanqing said with a gentle smile. Shu Honglan's blush deepened upon hearing this. A light breeze blew past. Their clothes fluttered in the wind. The woman's red dress contrasted with the man's blood-stained white robe, creating a beautiful and harmonious scene. Shu Honglan opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but she discovered that she didn't know what to say aside from words of gratitude. I think you look familiar. I feel like I've seen you somewhere before. The woman only managed to say this after a long while, but she immediately regretted it. Who would try to strike up a conversation with such a lame excuse? Besides, they had seen each other so many times already, so how was he familiar? This was too stupid. This was too embarrassing. It was over, it was over, it was over. Shu Honglan's face was flushed with embarrassment, and she clenched her fists tightly, wanting to find a hole to hide in. Chapter 1674. What a coincidence. I also feel like we've met somewhere before. Xian Yuanqing nodded in agreement with a smile. Shu Honglan faltered slightly upon hearing this. She could tell that Xian Yuanqing's expression seemed to be quite serious, as if he was telling the truth. Not only was he very considerate, but he was also quite an actor. Shu Honglan was extremely touched, and she couldn't help but turn to look at him again. Her heart rate accelerated again as she met his gentle and warm gaze. Xian Yuanqing continued, Ms. Honglan, do you remember what happened on the 82nd level of the Immortal Spirit Tower at Xiuxian United University? The 82nd level of the Immortal Spirit Tower? Shu Honglan murmured as a strange feeling welled up in her heart. Xian Yuanqing looked at Shu Honglan with a serious expression before adding, Shu Yu. Shu Honglan's body shuddered slightly, and a dazed expression appeared on her face for the first time. What a familiar name. I feel like I've heard it somewhere before, but why can't I remember? Shu Honglan clasped her head with a pained expression. Xian Yuanqing hurriedly pried her hand away. If you can't remember, then don't think about it. You are who you are. Perhaps you're feeling a sense of familiarity because you were related to Shu Yu in your past life, Xian Yuanqing consoled in a gentle voice. That's right, Shu Yu and Shu Honglan were very similar in appearance. It was exactly because of this that Xianyuan Cheng felt like he had met her somewhere before. Shu Yu is related to my past life? Shu Honglan's eyes gradually lit up, and she held on to Xianyuan Cheng's hand with excitement in her eyes. You're very familiar with Shu Yu? Were they Dao partners? Could it be that I'm Shu Yu's next life? Xianyuan Cheng was momentarily at a loss for words. He still hadn't confirmed the relationship between Shu Honglan and Shu Yu. Who would have thought that Shu Honglan would accept that she was Shu Yu's next life so quickly? What the hell was going on? Shu Honglan's cheeks flushed red, and she mustered up her courage. Our relationship was severed in our previous life. So in this life, are you here to continue your fate? Xianyuan Cheng was shocked. Where did his imagination go? Dao companion? Continue our relationship? He had only helped to release Shu Yu's battle divinity, allowing her to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Well, it's not what Miss Honglan thinks. It's like this. Xianyuan Cheng gave Shu Honglan an explanation of what had happened. Shu Honglan was a little disappointed upon hearing this, but at the same time, her gaze toward Xianyuan Cheng became even more scorching. Young Master Xianyuan is so kind and gentle. He saved me from being trapped in the immortal spirit tower and ended my days of eternal battle, allowing me to regain my freedom and happiness. Shu Honglan pursed her lips and said, I was unable to repay your kindness in my past life, so I can only repay you in my next life. In this life, I have the chance to repay you. Xianyuan Cheng. Shu Honglan's eyes were filled with the image of the white-robed man in front of her. Xianyuan Cheng knew that Shu Honglan had a very low self-esteem, but at the same time, she was also very courageous. She was the one who initiated a conversation with him for the first time, and now, she was the one who was offering to repay him for the first time. Perhaps Shu Yu's experiences had given her a lot of courage, giving her the courage to make some decisions and make some changes that she didn't even dare to think about in the past. Shu Honglan stared at Xianyuan Cheng with a serious expression. Young Master Xianyuan, you've also saved me this time. You've already saved me twice, so let me repay you in this life. Xianyuan Cheng was a little overwhelmed by her scorching gaze. How was Shu Honglan so sure that Shu Yu was her past life? I haven't confirmed it yet, so why is she doing this? She's clearly trying to take the initiative. Xianyuan Cheng grumbled internally. However, he wasn't repulsed by this. Instead, he was a little expectant. Young Master Xianyuan, are you unwilling? Tears welled up in Shu Honglan's eyes, and she hung her head again. Her confidence as the #1 dancer in the spirit sword state had completely disappeared as she spoke in a low voice. Are you disdainful of my lowly background and mediocre cultivation aptitude? No, that's not what I meant. Xianyuan Cheng immediately shook his head before coming to a realization, and a smile appeared on his face as he asked, The 4-9 Immortal Sect is currently in need of a dance instructor. Would you be willing to come and teach at the 4-9 Immortal Sect? Pay and such can be negotiated. Shu Honglan's mouth gaped open slightly, and she stared blankly at Xianyuan Cheng as if she had been struck by bliss. After a long while, What? Are you unwilling? I'm willing. I'm super willing. She nodded incessantly, and she couldn't repress her smile any longer as she rushed toward Xianyuan Cheng and gave him a hug before retreating with a blush on her face. Xianyuan Cheng was a little dazed by the woman's initiative, and there was still a hint of warmth and fragrance lingering in his arms. Shu Honglan also felt like she had lost her composure. Who the hell knew why she was trying to take advantage of Xianyuan Cheng just then? It definitely wasn't because Xianyuan Cheng was handsome. Perhaps it was because of some other reason. Perhaps it was some sort of inexplicable fate? Xianyuan Cheng recalled that Shu Yu had told him a few decades ago that she would definitely pursue him if she were still alive at the Immortal Spirit Tower. It looked like that really was the case. The man's absent-mindedness made the atmosphere a little awkward. Shu Honglan changed the subject. The wind sure is strong today. Xian Yuanqing nodded. That's right. Perhaps it's because we dropped a lot of bombs. Shu Honglan. Big Sister Lan Lan, a yell sounded in the distance. A young woman in a purple dress flew over with a man and a woman on her flying carpet before waving her hand with elation. I've rescued your parents! Tong Ling, Dad, Mom. Shu Honglan had already figured out what was going on. It appeared that Xian Yuanqing was able to react so quickly and come to their rescue not just because of the nuclear warhead, but also because Tong Ling had provided him with information in advance. Immediately afterward, everyone was reunited with one another. Shu Honglan also decided to accompany Xian Yuanqing to the 4-9 Immortal Sect, and she also decided to take Tong Ling, who was extremely proficient in music theory, to the 4-9 Immortal Sect. Xian Yuanqing had always been revered as one of the top male idols of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, and he had suddenly brought back two extremely beautiful women from the Spirit Sword state. This created a massive stir in the sect, and countless female disciples' hearts had been shattered. Xian Yuanqing announced to the public that he had only brought them back because of their cultivation aptitude. However, no one believed him, especially since Shu Honglan was the renowned #1 dancer in the Spirit Sword state. Even in the 4-9 Immortal Sect, there were many disciples who had heard of her. For a woman like her to willingly come to the 4-9 Immortal Sect with Xian Yuanqing at a time like this was no ordinary woman. Thus, everyone began to gather information, and they finally learned that Xian Yuanqing was a frequent customer of the Red Leaf Workshop and that he often rewarded Shu Honglan with treasures. The 4-9 Immortal Sect was shocked once again. However, no matter what they asked, Xian Yuanqing refused to divulge any information. Su Xiaolan's gossipy nature was ablaze, and she forced Tong Ling and Shu Honglan to divulge the entire story before revealing this secret to Enlin. Past life, present life. From Shu Yu to Shu Honglan, both of them had fallen in love with Xian Yuanqing. The next few decades were filled with Shu Honglan's relentless pursuit of Xian Yuanqing. It was said that it was difficult for a woman to pursue a man. However, this veil remained unbroken even after several decades, until Enlin returned. Su Xiaolan finally told Enlin this story. Chapter 1675. Enlin couldn't help but reminisce about this story. Who would have thought that the immortal spirit tower would be able to continue their relationship? He sighed with emotion as he looked at Xian Yuanqing and Shu Honglan, who were still conversing with one another. Thinking back, he was still engaged in a heated battle with war god Xing Tian and Emperor Ziwei. However, Big Brother Qing had already seduced all of his future girlfriends. There was a massive disparity between their cultivation bases. With this in mind, Enlin clasped a hand over his chest. Enlin, do you also think that Shu Honglan is the reincarnation of celestial immortal Shu Yu? Su Xiaolan asked with a smile. Enlin splayed his hands open. Big Brother Qing already thinks so, and Shu Honglan has also admitted to it. She's still scared that she's not a reincarnation, so what else can we say? Even if she's not a reincarnation, let's just pretend she is. Su Xiaolan nodded. Divine sense possession, rejuvenation, and multiple lives are all common occurrences in the cultivation world. It's quite possible that Shu Yu managed to retain her divine sense and reincarnate. In any case, I know that Shu Honglan likes Big Brother Qing, and Big Brother Qing must be interested in Shu Honglan as well. Otherwise, he wouldn't have allowed her to pursue him for several decades. However, it's been several decades, and they still haven't confirmed their relationship? That's way too long. Enlin was in disbelief as he munched on a spirit fruit. It was quite clear that there was something going on between Xian Yuanqing and Shu Honglan. However, it was a little difficult to understand why they hadn't become Dao partners even after several decades. Even a piece of wet wood that couldn't be ignited should have dried up after several decades, right? There's actually a reason for this. Su Xiaolan hesitated momentarily before speaking in a quiet voice. What's the reason? Enlin asked with a curious expression. I heard that Xianyuan Cheng's parents split up due to a relationship issue, and that has severely impacted his outlook on relationships, so he won't enter into a relationship easily, Su Xiaolan replied in a quiet voice. Lin's eyes lit up as he nodded lightly. Immortal cultivators, unless they were particularly scummy, were actually still very loyal to their feelings. They would not be like those mortals on Earth, who would casually fall in love and break up if they were not suitable. Even if they were married, they could still divorce. In the world of immortal cultivation, they were either friends or cultivation companions who had to stay together forever. If they were to suddenly separate due to a relationship issue, not only would they feel ashamed, it could even affect their Tao hearts. In the case of Patriarch Zhu Yin, it was even possible for their cultivation base to drop. Once they found a Tao companion, they would accompany each other until they grew old. They would spend their entire lives alone, and each companion would have their own Tao. This was also one of the reasons why Su Xiaolan used the promise of 100 years to confirm their love. If that's the case, I'll have to do something decisive to break the barrier in Brother Cheng's heart. Lin looked at the beautiful couple in the distance. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were a match made in heaven. Xu Honglan could take the initiative to flirt with Big Brother Cheng, but she didn't go too far. She only danced, interacted with him as if they were good friends, gave him presents, and exchanged flirtatious glances. It was quite clear that she wouldn't be able to force herself on Big Brother Cheng. How about we drug him? Lin murmured. Slap. Lin's head was instantly slapped by Su Xiaolan. What are you thinking? Can't you think of something more constructive? Su Xiaolan flared up with rage. Lin was a little conflicted. Both of them had feelings for each other, and they were only one step away from breaking the paper window, only to find out that this paper window was a two-dimensional foil that couldn't be broken even after several decades. Furthermore, all of their efforts had been dealt a blow, so how could they not do something drastic? How about we get Xu Honglan to confess to Big Brother Cheng? Lin suggested with excitement. We've already tried that. A crisp voice sounded from behind him. Lin turned to discover a petite young woman in a purple dress standing off to the side with a smile on her face. She extended a respectful salute. Tong Ling pays her respects to sect leader Lin. Oh, so you're Tong Ling. There's no need to be so polite. Tell me the details. Lin's interest was immediately piqued. 42 years ago, Big Sister Lan Lan confessed to Pavilion Lord Xianyuan. Pavilion Lord Xianyuan was very touched and rejected her. After that, Lan Lan confessed to him 5 times in the past few decades, but Xianyuan Cheng rejected her every single time. Tong Ling spoke with a resigned expression. Lin was astonished. Holy F***ck, Xu Honglan can still persist like this? Big Brother Cheng can't keep her hanging. An awkward expression appeared on Tong Ling's face. Actually, it's Big Sister Lan Lan who keeps pestering him. It's not exactly pestering, but Pavilion Lord Xianyuan seems to be enjoying this process. What kind of **T is this? Lin's lips twitched. Pavilion Lord Xianyuan still holds Big Sister Lan Lan in high regard. 13 years ago, there was a battle against the heavenly human tribe. In order to save Big Sister Lan Lan, Pavilion Lord Xianyuan risked his life and fought against over a dozen heavenly human tribe generals, all to buy time for Big Sister Lan Lan to leave, Tong Ling continued. Lin finally understood what was going on. Xu Honglan occupied a very important place in Big Brother Cheng's heart, and he actually had quite a good impression of her. However, he was very resistant to, and even fearful of, the idea of a Tao partner. Marriage phobia, Lin murmured to himself. Xiaoza and Fanny's wedding and their current happy life are unable to excite Xianyuan Cheng, Su Xiaolan said with a distressed expression. Lin then proposed a few more plans, such as going on a vacation together or exploring ruins to improve their relationship, all of which were rejected by Su Xiaolan and Tong Ling. Tong Ling listened for a while, and after seeing that there was no hope, she went off to participate in an event. Anlin and Su Xiaolan were still trying to come up with a plan for Xianyuan Cheng's marriage. Dabai sprawled off to the side and yawned as he listened to the two of them bicker. Two people who haven't officially confirmed their Dao partner relationship for over 100 years are worrying about two people who haven't confirmed their Dao partner relationship for several decades. How interesting, woof! Dabai grumbled lazily. Boom. His words were like a clap of thunder. Anlin and Su Xiaolan were instantly rooted to the spot. At the same time, 10,000 points of damage were dealt. Everyone fell silent for a moment. Yeah. Why am I so concerned about Big Brother Cheng? Anlin murmured. Su Xiaolan placed her delicate hand on the back of Anlin's hand with a serious expression. Anlin, I can actually get married whenever you want. Anlin gently caressed the bridge of her nose with a smile. I told you, once this battle is over, no one will be able to disturb us. That's when we get married. When that time comes, I'm going to hold the grandest wedding in the world for you. Yes. Su Xiaolan nodded with boundless love in her eyes. Burp. Dabai burped. He silently pulled out a golden rice ball and started munching on it. This was pure dog food that could eliminate all of the negative emotions in one's heart. Dabai instantly felt a sense of contentment, and his eyes narrowed in bliss. Chapter 1676. The sect celebration lasted for an entire night. After a night of fun, all of the pavilion lords, elders, and sect disciples returned to the sect to rest. Anlin enjoyed Yi Ling's massage for an entire night, as well as a long conversation with Su Xiaolan. He was now full of energy and didn't feel sleepy at all. He thought back to the decision he had made the night before. It's time to absorb heavenly venerate Yu Qiong's divine Dao true intent, Anlin murmured to himself as he swept his divine sense over a certain ball within his body. Su Xiaolan stood off to the side with a solemn expression on her face. Yi Ling, Dabai, Tina, Little Gu, Su Qianyun, and the others also gathered around to appraise Anlin with curiosity in their eyes. Su Qianyun, who was even more beautiful than a celestial maiden in a blue silk dress, widened her eyes in excitement. Classmate Anlin's skin is so good now. It's as white as jade and it's so translucent. Master's side effects are indeed quite enviable, Yi Ling chimed in with a wide grin. Su Xiaolan also took this opportunity to make fun of Anlin. Everyone loves beauty. Your skin is so good now. You're even more beautiful than I am. Anlin couldn't help but roll his eyes. It's easy for you guys to say that. I can't even move my limbs right now. I feel like I'm going to become a statue soon. He had already begun to absorb heavenly venerate Yu Qiong's divine Dao true intent. The side effects of his body becoming more and more translucent. His skin was becoming more and more translucent, as if he really was going to become white jade. Dabai was extremely excited, and he held up the photographic crystal before snapping a few shots of Anlin from all angles. I hope the divine Dao true intent of the most powerful being in the sinister spirit beast cesspool will be able to surprise me. Anlin calmed himself down and began to absorb the power left behind by Heavenly Venerate Yu Qiong. Heavenly Venerate Yu Qiong was a super mighty figure that was about to take the final step to create a world. What he was most proficient in was fusing his divine Dao into the jade and releasing it. In particular, its terrifying spell technique that summoned 99 Dao integration stage mythological beasts. Only by using the Dao Jade as the foundation could it summon the souls and power of the mythological beasts in harmony. Fusing the Dao into Jade was the core of Heavenly Venerate Yu Qiong's divine Dao true intent. A vast amount of spell technique true intent surged into Anlin's mind like a tsunami before fusing into his body. That true intent was indistinct and profound. It was profound and pointed straight to the source of the great Dao. This was a path that could lead to the heavens. Anlin's eyes lit up even more. As expected of the most powerful being in the sinister spirit-beast cesspool, heavenly venerate Yu Qiong's path of the divine Tao had given Enlin a very pleasant surprise. It was as if a certain congested environment had suddenly been opened up to reveal a brand new world. To heavenly venerate Yu Qiong, fusing its Tao into jade and then carving out a world from within the jade was definitely not an empty dream. It could be said that heavenly venerate Yu Qiong had a good chance of progressing to the God of Creation stage. It's a pity that you died by my hands before you even reached the God of Creation stage, and you imparted your God of Creation stage divine Tao true intent into me. I really don't know how to repay you. Enlin was still absorbing the divine Tao true intent, but the corners of his lips curled up involuntarily. He had just picked up a huge bargain. My God, you've really become a jade woman. Su Qianyun's mellow voice sounded beside his ear. Will Big Brother and be all right? Woof. Photographer Dabai put down the photographic crystal in his hand with a nervous expression. Enlin wanted to look down at his own body upon hearing this. However, crack, a cracking sound erupted from his neck. Enlin was given a massive fright. He felt as if his body had become extremely hard. Not just his neck, but every other part of his body was completely immobilized, as if they had completely stiffened and refused to listen to his commands. His body was no longer made of flesh and blood. Instead, it was as if his body was made of jade. Enlin had no choice but to give up on moving his body. Instead, he used his divine sense to examine his own body. He was then greeted by the sight of an extremely perfect body that was like a work of art. It was translucent, without a single trace of impurities. Even his hair had become countless strands of white silk. He was perfect and flawless, and his expression was tranquil and elegant. He wore a white robe, but he was as ethereal as an immortal, and his body glowed with a faint jade light under the sun. This was the most perfect work of art. This Enlin was astonished. I, Enlin, am so beautiful? All of the spectators were astonished by this scene. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but wrap her arms around Enlin's waist and ask Dabai to take a photo with them. Everyone else also couldn't repress their desires upon seeing Su Xiaolan's request, and they all wrapped their arms around Enlin, asking for a photo. Of course they couldn't pass up such a rare opportunity. Enlin didn't even know what to say as he looked at Su Xiaolan, who was excitedly waving pictures around. Didn't you say you were going to protect me? Is this how you're going to protect me? How depressing. However, everyone was quite sensible, and they chatted among themselves for a while before settling down. Enlin's observation of heavenly venerate Yu Qiong's divine Tao true intent was also gradually progressing. Even though he had become a jade humanoid and his body was extremely rigid, to the point where he was almost unable to move, his Tao heart was not affected in the slightest. Instead, he was completely immersed in heavenly venerate Yu Qiong's Tao realm. He sat there for an entire 7 days. During these 7 days, Su Xiaolan stood by his side in silence. All of the pavilion lords and elders of the 4-9 Immortal sect all came to visit sect leader Enlin and took a group photo with him. All of the sect disciples who had been left outside didn't pass up on this rare opportunity and chose to take a group photo in the distance. Their young master was as beautiful as jade, so how could they not take a souvenir? When Enlin reopened his eyes, Su Xiaolan also opened her mesmerizing eyes, and she made her way over to Enlin before speaking in a gentle voice. How did it go? I did it. A smile appeared on Enlin's face as he said, Heavenly venerate Yu Qiong's divine Tao true intent and Tao fusion technique are very compatible with my power, so I've already mastered it. Su Xiaolan was also a little excited upon hearing this. Come on, let's show off. Tina, Dabai, Su Qianyun, Xianyuan Qing, Dongfang Zhuangshi, and the others all turned to look at Enlin with curiosity and anticipation in their eyes, but at the same time, there was also a hint of disappointment. There was no other reason than that the beautiful Enlin had disappeared. Unlin's skin had reverted back to its original appearance, and he had become a burly man. Unlin spread open his hand, and a peculiar power surged for several dozen kilometers before converging in his palm. Crackle, crackle, it was as if lightning had struck his palm and fused with it. A burst of Tao true intent that encompassed everything in this world converged in his palm, and all creation of heaven and earth converged into one point was unleashed without reservation, upon which everyone's expressions stirred as a hint of fear welled up in their hearts. In the next instant, a white ball appeared in Unlin's palm. It was round and smooth, pure white and holy, so perfect that there was not a single flaw. Everyone's attention was drawn to this scene. Dongfang Zhuangshi was extremely astonished. "That's heavenly venerate Yu Qiong's Tao Jade?" Unlin nodded with a smile. "That's right. But I feel like there's something missing from this Tao Jade." Su Xiaolan stroked her chin with furrowed brows. Unlin replied, "It's missing the fusion of the divine Tao. Heavenly venerate Yu Qiong has fused its divine Tao into jade, which is why it's called a Tao Jade. I don't have the divine Tao yet, so all I have is jade. An empty shell of jade without any substance is incomplete." "I see. Does that mean it'll be less powerful?" Dongfang Zhuangshi was a little disappointed. "That's all right, I have a good idea." Unlin's eyes lit up with excitement. "It's time to witness a miracle." Chapter 1677. The flawless white jade trembled uncontrollably. A special power was injected into the white jade. This was a supreme aura, an inviolable heavenly might. The white jade was like a piece of white paper that could absorb and be assimilated by all types of energy. Boom! A series of explosions erupted. Cries of astonishment ensued. They all saw the white jade hovering above Unlin's palm turn into a golden ball of lightning. This was not the main point. The main point was that they were all too familiar with the power released by the ball of lightning. This was a supreme power that could rule over everything, the power of the heavenly gods. The power of the heavenly gods of lightning? Unlin, you can infuse the power of the heavenly gods of lightning into the Tao Jade? Su Xiaolan's eyes glowed with excitement as she grabbed onto Unlin's arm. "Haha! Releasing the Tao Jade can fuse the divine Tao into the jade. Although I don't have the divine Tao, the power of the heavenly gods is still a part of the Tao." Unlin said triumphantly, "Let's look at it from another angle. I can just fuse the lightning of the heavenly Tao into the Tao Jade." Su Xiaolan's eyes lit up. "Won't that make it even more badass?" Unlin nodded. "It will. The Tao Jade has the ability to facilitate the use of the power of the divine Tao, and the more badass part is yet to come." Unlin's eyes narrowed as he spoke, and his power surged violently as another pristine, flawless white jade ball appeared in the air. Immediately afterward, a completely different yet equally supreme power began to fuse into the Tao Jade, triggering some sort of qualitative change. Gales began to howl for 150 kilometers. A translucent, spinning sphere appeared. It contained the supreme power of the heavenly Tao, as if a supreme god had descended upon this world. "When Tao Jade appear?" Everyone's mouths gaped open. At this moment, a red metallic ball appeared. It was as if it was going to slice heaven and earth in half. "Metal Tao Jade appear." Soon, a white jade ball also began to appear. Immediately afterward, the white jade ball began to transform into an earthy yellow Tao Jade that was as heavy as a mountain. "Mountain Tao Jade appear." The four powers of the heavenly gods of lightning transformed into Tao Jades and appeared in the world at the same time. The terrifying aura made it hard for everyone to breathe. They all looked at Unlin in shock, as if they were looking at something inconceivable. They had fought alongside Unlin on many occasions, so they were well aware of just how terrifying Unlin's combat prowess was after unleashing his powers of the heavenly gods. He was a being that could even contend with a heavenly god. Before this, Unlin could only constantly switch authorities to fight, but even so, it was already very impressive. Now, with the help of the Tao Jade, he could actually use the power of the heavenly gods at the same time. Was he going to ascend to the heavens? Looking at everyone's shocked expressions, Unlin smiled faintly and said, "Actually, this state also has its flaws. It will consume a lot of energy, and it won't be able to maintain combat strength for a long time. Furthermore, a single type of power of the heavenly gods was purer and more powerful than a divine halo. Fusing them into the Tao Jade would actually weaken the power. That's why I'm taking this approach." The hovering authority of mountains disappeared. At the same time, an earthy yellow divine halo appeared above Enlin's head, and a suffocating aura began to proliferate forth, as if he were facing a paramount divine mountain with no end in sight. One main divine halo and 3 secondary divine halos. Enlin waved a hand, and the 3 authority Tao Jades revolved around his body in an agile manner, as if they were satellites that served the paramount divine leader. Everyone was stunned by this, and their bodies shuddered involuntarily. To have the most regal power in this world revolve around one's body as if they were toys. I'm afraid there's probably no one else in this world who would dare to do something like this, Xian Yuanqing murmured to himself. Big Brother and is bad *SS. Woof. Dabai was also filled with admiration. Master's divine ability is truly shocking. It is unparalleled in the universe. Shui Zhantian flapped his little wings, and his body trembled violently as he stared at Enlin with a scorching light in his big blue eyes. The reverence in his eyes made it seem as if he was about to pounce on Enlin and offer his body to him. Enlin put away the 3 authority Tao Jades and the power of the heavenly gods above his head with a faint smile on his face, and he accepted everyone's praise with elation. In all honesty, the true intent of the divine Tao left to him by heavenly venerate Yu Qiong was much more powerful and useful than he had imagined. He had initially thought that tossing Qiuqiu into the air would give him a small increase in his combat prowess, but who would have thought that he would be able to fuse the power of the heavenly gods into the Tao Jades? This wasn't just a small increase in combat prowess, it was a massive increase. However, he couldn't say for sure just how powerful he was now. Xiao Hong. Enlin stretched his body before speaking to Xiao Hong, who was basking in the sun in the distance. Xiao Hong swayed her body from side to side as she asked in her sweet voice, "What can I do for you, master? Can't you summon a sun?" "Summon a sun for me to taste," Enlin requested. Everyone's heart jolted upon hearing this. Xiao Hong's body shuddered. What the hell was this? He wanted to eat a sun? "Master. What's wrong with you?" Xiao Hong was given a fright. Su Xiaolan recalled that Enlin had mentioned that he wanted to eat a sun to level up, and she couldn't help but wait with anticipation on her face. "Nothing, just tell me if you can summon a sun for me to taste," Enlin replied. Xiao Hong paused for a few seconds before asking, "I can. What kind of sun would you like, master?" Enlin took a deep breath. "You can choose flavors? It's so high class." "That's right, there's the boundless love day, the sorrowful wind day, the ecstasy day, the drunken dream day, and the passionate passion day." Xiao Hong listed off the flavors in her sweet voice. Enlin's head throbbed upon hearing this. The original flavor. I'll eat the original flavor. All of the onlookers were dumbstruck. What was going on? Were these two seriously discussing how to eat the sun? They were even discussing what flavor to eat. Why did it feel like they were discussing what kind of potato chips to eat? Was this the world of big shots? Xiao Hong harumph. "All right, original flavor it is." Boom. An earth-shattering explosion erupted. Scorching heatwaves instantly proliferated outward. Su Xiaolan immediately activated an immortal spell barrier to restrict Xiao Hong's power to a certain range. A scorching sun appeared in the air, incinerating all things. The extreme temperatures made the air twist and warp, and the earth began to melt into scorching lava. Not only was Xiao Hong's divine Tao related to the Golden Crow, but it was also related to the only light and heat between heaven and earth. Thus, she was actually the representative of a sun. This was also why Enlin chose to ask Xiaohong for help. What a big guy! Enlin looked up at the sun, which had a diameter of over 10,000 meters, and he felt as if he had become as tiny as an ant. Xiaohong had unleashed her full power of the divine Tao, so the temperature at the center of the sun was probably at least a few 100,000 degrees. Even normal Tao integration stage mighty figures would want to avoid this attack. What idiot would want to swallow it alive? However, Enlin wanted to. Chapter 1678. Enlin's fate with the sun was quite extraordinary. Thinking back, in order to obtain a yang-type cultivation method, he had kissed the little sun, Ili. That exhilarating feeling was still fresh in his mind, and he had almost kissed himself to death. Now, he wasn't just going to kiss a sun. He was going to eat a sun. Eat me just because you love me? What the hell? With sect leader Enlin around, the 4-9 Immortal sect was not going to be peaceful. Not long after that, several thousand disciples saw another sun rise over the sect. All of them were astonished, and a thought occurred to them at the same time. Was the sect leader going to stir up some big news again? The Jade sect leader had yet to recede, and all of the disciples were just about to focus on their cultivation. Now, he was summoning a sun again. Was he going to let them focus on their cultivation? All of the disciples cursed silently, but they couldn't help but run toward the sun. Ah, it really is sect leader Enlin and Elder Xiaohong. My God, what is Elder Xiaohong trying to do by summoning such a terrifying fireball? That's not a fireball. I can feel the purest light and heat from it. That's not a fireball. That's the power of the sun. How about we hide further away? It's quite scary to see such a huge sun hovering in the sky. With sect leader Xiaolan protecting us, there's nothing to be afraid of. Say, what is sect leader Enlin trying to do this time? Could it be that he's going to teach Elder Xiaohong cultivation? All of the disciples began to discuss spiritedly among themselves. All of their eyes were glued to Enlin, and they were filled with an indescribable sense of anticipation. At this moment, a figure in a flowing white robe had already risen into the sky. Under everyone's watchful eyes, he pounced toward the terrifying sun like a moth flying toward a flame. He was like an indomitable warrior pouncing toward an undefeatable being. Immediately afterward, the warrior opened his mouth and bit down on the gargantuan sun. Boundless engulfment power instantly erupted. Huge amounts of scorching flames surged into Enlin's gaping mouth. In ancient times there was Song who ate hot dogs. Today there is Enlin who swallowed the sun. Enlin's mouth grew bigger and bigger, and the size of the sun became smaller and smaller. However, the energy within the sun started to be released, turning from gold to white. The terrifying temperature rose to a peak, causing the surrounding space to distort and burn. The disciples who were not weak couldn't even look at the scene in front of them. The light was too dazzling, and it would blind them. The temperature of the sun had definitely reached an extremely terrifying level. Enlin's clothes could no longer bear the burden and started to burn. Some of the female disciples had their eyes wide open. They were willing to take the risk of being blinded by the sun's core in order to witness sect leader Enlin's glory. However, to their disappointment, Su Xiaolan added a sacred flame robe for Enlin at the right time, covering Lord Sovereign who was almost exposed in spring. Enlin swallowed the sun like a whale, and his skin became scorching red and swelled slightly, as if he was about to explode from the scorching heat. However, he was already at the return to void intermediate stage, and his power had increased significantly. His body of the war god was also indestructible, so he was still able to withstand the power of this sun. Not long after that, Enlin swallowed the original flavor of the sun that Xiaohong had released. Burp! The man in midair let loose a loud burp, and a small flaming dragon shot forth from his mouth. Everyone fell silent. All of the disciples stared at the scenes unfolding before their eyes with dumbstruck expressions. He swallowed it. Sect leader Unlin really swallowed it. Holy Mother of God, that's a sun, so powerful. Even sect leader Unlin was so mesmerizing when he swallowed the sun. Unlin's entire body was scorching hot, and he felt as if his body was about to explode. However, he managed to hold on. He hurriedly pulled out a white robe of the same design from his storage ring and put it on before slowly descending to the ground. There was no notification from the system. Xiao Hong, this son of yours is fake, right? Unlin asked with a disappointed expression. Fake? Master, don't be so heartless. Xiao Hong flared up with rage. I praise the sun, I love the sun is my everything, and I summoned it here. How could it be fake? Unlin rolled his eyes and gave a perfunctory reply. All right, the sun is real. Xiao Hong flared up with rage again. Master, your attitude is extremely disrespectful to the sun. Unlin pursed his lips in exasperation. What else do you want me to do? Xiao Hong replied in her sweet voice. Sing praises to the sun with me 100 times to express your apology. Unlin immediately walked away. Sing such a shameful song 100 times? No way. If he had completed the system mission, then so be it. But if he hadn't completed the mission, why would he sing? The system mission for him to break through to the Return to Void final stage didn't respond at all, which meant that the sun that Xiao Hong had summoned was indeed fake. Or rather, it wasn't real enough to be acknowledged by the system. As such, he naturally had to find a better sun to try. Speaking of a sun, he naturally thought of the god of creation's sun. A sun created by a god of creation would definitely be very real. After all, it was something created from the essential essence of the world. However, the essential sun of a world was extremely terrifying, and even a Tao integration stage super mighty figure would be incinerated to death if they swallowed one. However, the Return to Void stage mighty figure Unlin wasn't going to back down. Of course, the prerequisite was that the goddess of creation, Tina, had to give him a hack. Little now, I'll have to rely on you now. Unlin abandoned Xiao Hong and turned to the little fairy with a loving expression. Tina nodded obediently before replying in a crisp, pleasant voice, Sure, but Giant Unlin, if you enter my world, you might immediately be surrounded by 5 heavenly gods. We have to take care of them first, that's right. I almost forgot about them. Unlin clapped his hands together in realization. Tina pursed her lips. Giant Unlin, it's time for you to nourish your brain. Su Xiaolan also made her way over to him with a curious expression. How are they doing now? They're fine. They're probably afraid of backlash and don't dare to destroy the Divine Mirror World, so they're looking for loopholes in the Divine Mirror World. They really did find a few, but they weren't enough for them to escape. After that, I hurriedly repaired the loopholes. Tina chuckled. Unlin was astonished. That's right. The Divine Mirror World is becoming more and more complete these past few days. It's all thanks to the hard work of those heavenly gods. Tina covered her mouth and chuckled lightly. That's right. The Divine Mirror World is becoming more and more complete these past few days. It's all thanks to the hard work of those heavenly gods. Dongfang Zhuangshi also sighed with emotion. The antagonists these days are so adorable. First, they give us all the true intent of the Divine Tao, then they help us find loopholes in the world. Chapter 1679. However, as the Divine Mirror World becomes more and more perfect, there are no more and more loopholes for these volunteer workers to exploit. Tina hesitated momentarily before speaking. Oh, then they're useless now. We can destroy them now. Unlin nodded. How practical. Throwing them away after using them? Dongfang Zhuangshi looked at Unlin in a new light. The 5 heavenly gods are already cornered beasts, but it's still quite risky for us to kill them. Should we gather a few more people so that we can kill them together? Su Xiaolan asked. Of course. A ball of flames burned in Unlin's eyes. I have a bold plan. Not long after that, A piece of news from the 4-9 Immortal sect began to spread across the entire continent. The hype surrounding the destruction of the northern Heavenly Gate was still raging. The headlines of all of the Tai Chu continent's newspapers and news outlets were once again dominated by Enlin. The sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal sect, Enlin, was going to publicly execute 7 heavenly human tribe great generals, 3 Tao integration stage mythological beasts, and 5 heavenly gods. This was a public execution of heavenly gods. What kind of beings were heavenly gods? They stood proudly at the pinnacle of the kingdom of the 9 states and belonged to the paramount power of the heavens. The heavenly gods were the heavens, and they looked down upon all living beings as if they were mere ants. But now, a mere human like Enlin was going to publicly execute such terrifying beings on behalf of the kingdom of the 9 states and the entire human race. And not just 1, but 5 of them. This piece of news was like a bomb that instantly sent shockwaves rippling through the entire Tai Chu continent. Regardless of whether they were civilians or powerful cultivators, all of them felt as if their heads were going to explode, and they stared blankly toward the east. It was as if they could see an unfathomably powerful being looking down upon the heavens and ascending to the heavens. The Tai Chu continent was once again rocked by Enlin. It continued to vibrate, shock, and tremble. My God, sect leader Enlin is getting more and more terrifying every time he does something. Another earth-shattering event. Can't you give me a break? Can't you at least let my heart calm down? Those heavenly human tribe great generals on the northern front were all bullsh *t. 5 heavenly gods besieging Enlin? This is obviously Enlin surrounding and killing 5 heavenly gods, right? Sect leader Enlin is so terrifying. I had initially thought that the heaven-crushing sect was the last line of defense against the heavenly gods. Who would have thought that the 4-9 Immortal sect would also be able to surpass them? Have they been on drugs recently? How could they be so powerful? It's all because Enlin came back to life. Enlin is truly our continent's most remarkable man. God-en is invincible. God-en is awesome. The 4-9 Immortal sect might become the next heaven-crushing sect. It was no wonder that some powerful beings would think this way. The heaven-crushing sect had led the human race to battle against the heavenly human tribe united army for several decades, and the front lines had been constantly shrinking. However, as soon as Enlin appeared, he turned the tide and broke through 2 heavenly gates in a row. Now, he was even going to publicly execute a heavenly god, something that others wouldn't even dare to think about. One had to realize that in the past, publicly executing a heavenly human tribe great general was already a monumental event that would shake the entire continent. But now, great generals were only the appetizer. The real targets of execution were heavenly gods, who were a rank higher than great generals, and there were a total of 5 of them. This was something that made one's blood boil with excitement. The kingdom of the 9 states united army burst into tears upon hearing this news. They drank to their heart's content, sang to their heart's content, and yelled the names of Enlin and the 4-9 Immortal sect to celebrate this grand occasion. It was undoubtedly the case that Enlin had become the new dawn of the kingdom of the 9 states united army and even the entire continent. News of this swept through the entire continent and attracted the attention of all the powerful beings on the first-rate continent. The Tao integration stage super mighty figures, the ethereal god of creation stage, and the transcendent god of creation all turned their attention to the kingdom of the 9 states. They turned their attention to a seemingly mundane but extremely powerful sect. The things that Mr. Enlin has done are getting scarier and scarier. He's using his own strength to speed up our plan. Only with drastic changes can new hope be born. His actions cannot be judged by normal standards, and it is exactly because of this that he has completely upended the entire situation. Enlin's actions had all of the first-rate mighty figures on the Tai Chu continent stirring to life. Some reclusive old monsters, some rulers who ruled over alternate worlds, and some terrifying beings who hadn't shown themselves for tens of thousands of years were all itching to make a move after receiving this news. As for the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army that was standing against the Kingdom of the Nine States United Army, they had been dealt another heavy blow. All of the powerful beings from the sinister spirit beast cesspool, void spirit realm, dark marshlands, creation realm, western heavenly dragon forest, and all of the other first-rate forces on the continent were struck by a sense of horror and unease. The Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings were also struck by boundless rage and horror. Publicly executing a heavenly god was a blatant slap to the face. Capturing the supreme commander of the enemy army alive and publicly executing him in front of all living beings in the world was a legendary slap to the face. Not a single living being had ever thought that something like this would ever happen. They were filled with rage, and they wanted to send out a massive army to slaughter the human army to their heart's content. However, the Heavenly Human Tribe great generals received a paramount command. Hold on. Don't attack. The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army was dealt another heavy blow. The enemy was going to publicly execute their leader, and they didn't even have the right to attack? How sorrowful, how sorrowful! The Heavenly Human Tribe United Army received another 10,000 points of critical damage. At this moment, at the 4-9 Immortal Sect, Enlin had already contacted Chun Chun. Chun Chun said that if Enlin were to execute those heavenly gods, there was a very good chance that there would be a violent backlash. The heaven-crushing sect could guarantee that the paramount heavenly gods wouldn't intervene, but he wouldn't be able to help them for the time being. Enlin was quite understanding, and he didn't force the issue. After all, there were many people who could help him. During the few days that Enlin had been absorbing the true intent from the Tao Jade, Dongfang Zhuangshi had already practiced the heaven-crushing techniques under the guidance of the ancient Dragon Empress. Apparently, his aptitude was quite good and he would be a good helper. Aside from that, the Celestial Tharch and Emperor Ziwei had also made it clear that they were going to participate in the execution of the heavenly gods. As for Emperor Chongqing, Emperor Tian Huang, and Emperor Qing Hua, they had to defend the Kingdom of the Nine States in case their enemies launched a massive attack during this period of time. A massive battle could erupt at any moment. Xiao Zhe and Xiao Tu also had their own positions to defend. Xiaolan and Little Huang's positions were taken by the Great Empress and Shangguan Yi, so they could join the execution team. Enlin made another announcement to the entire world. The public execution of the heavenly gods would take place in 10 days. All Tao integration stage, super mighty figures or gods of creation from all over the world were welcome to join the execution team. The execution would be broadcasted live on the Realm of the Fallen Phoenix outside the 4-9 Immortal Sect, and all of the communication crystal screens on the Tai Chu continent would also be broadcasting the execution live. The Tai Chu continent was once again thrown into a frenzy upon hearing this announcement. Chapter 1680. Not only was Enlin going to chop off the heavenly god's head in front of the entire world, he was going to invite all of the most powerful beings in the world to witness the heavenly god's head. It was better to have everyone happy together than to have fun alone. Would there be powerful beings participating in this extravagant banquet? Enlin felt like there would definitely be. It was just a matter of numbers. The 4-9 Immortal Sect was destined to receive the most attention in history. The eyes of the entire world were focused on that mysterious being in the east. Enlin sipped his tea leisurely as he looked on at the turbulent events unfolding in the outside world. At this moment, the cry of a crane traveled over from the distance. He raised his head, and his pupils contracted slightly as his mouth gaped open in astonishment. This was an extremely graceful red-crowned crane. Its feathers were pristine and flawless, and its sharp claws glowed with golden nobility. Its neck was long and proud, and its most eye-catching features were its eyes. Its eyes were even larger than its own head, and they were black and full of expression. They bulged on its head like watermelons, and they swayed unsteadily as if they were going to fall off at any moment. What a unique appearance. No matter where it flew, it would always attract attention. That's right, it was a large-eyed crane. Tui, Tui. Welcome, celestial maiden Tianyu. Enlin repressed his laughter as he waved at the beautiful celestial maiden standing on the crane's back. The large-eyed crane let out a proud cry, flapping its wings as it descended in front of Enlin. Lin Junjun leaped down from the crane's back in an extremely graceful manner, and a beautiful smile appeared on her face. Sect leader Enlin, it's been 100 years since we last met. I've missed you. 100 years, and you've become more and more beautiful. Enlin felt like Lin Junjun had become more and more graceful, and he also praised with a smile. The large-eyed crane is also becoming more and more unique. Lin Junjun's face convulsed, and she raised her little fist into the air. However, she suddenly realized that she was no match for Enlin, and she sheepishly lowered her fist. I came here to tell you that my father and Emperor Ziwei will be here in 9 days. They're going to the Langya Forbidden Realm to retrieve something good. What good stuff? Enlin asked curiously. Hee, it's related to you, but I'm not going to tell you. Lin Junjun's eyes crinkled as she chuckled lightly. Enlin, it was very uncomfortable to say half a sentence. Lin Junjun was even more elated at the sight of Enlin's defeated expression. This feeling was really comfortable. So what if you're awesome, Enlin? Can't I still make you suffer? This was the only thing Lin Junjun had left. The big-eyed crane looked around arrogantly, and then focused its gaze in one direction. Its eyes bulged out, and it exclaimed in a tender voice, "So big!" Lin Junjun nodded in agreement before exclaiming in amazement, "Sect leader Enlin is using his life to direct this show. This is definitely a legendary show that will never be replicated in history, and it's very possible that no one will be able to replicate it in the future." A massive screen over 10,000 feet in length and over 10,000 feet in height was erected on the 49 Immortal Sect's Dao Plaza. The resolution was an astonishing 3 quadrillion, and it was a true 4D surround scene. Not only was it a holographic projection that simulated reality, but it could also be restored in real time through vision, hearing, smell, taste, touch, soul, vitality, pressure, and other senses. It strived to let every audience feel the most realistic and appropriate experience of eating melons. This was the Purple Star's black technology. Of course, the most important piece of black technology was that Bai Ling could broadcast everything that was happening in the Divine Mirror World to the main world of the Tai Chu continent. All of the powers on the Tai Chu continent were also broadcasting the 49 Immortal Sect's massive screen in real time, and there were at least 10,000 media outlets that had obtained broadcasting rights from this. One could imagine just how much effort Enlin had put into this performance. Enlin, tell me the truth. What's the success rate of this plan to execute the heavenly gods? Lin Junjun turned to the man beside her with a concerned expression. Enlin raised a single finger. Lin Junjun's brows furrowed slightly. Only 10%? No, that's too risky. Let's take it slow or wait for someone more powerful to step in. Enlin rolled his eyes. I'm saying that there's a 100% chance of success. Lin Junjun was astonished. Where's your confidence coming from? The heavenly gods weren't some random nobody. They represented the paramount laws of the heavenly Tao and wielded supreme authority. No one would be surprised if accidents were to occur during the course of the battle. Even a god of creation stage god wouldn't dare to make such a bold claim, right? I'm confident in myself, Enlin replied with a faint smile. Lin Junjun. All right, she didn't want to say anything else in case she got slapped in the face. The two of them began to reminisce about the past as they waited for the greatest show in history to unfold. One by one, the experts began to arrive, wanting to witness this unprecedented execution. The first to arrive were naturally the powerful beings of the Kingdom of the Nine States. The soul formation stage powerful beings could enter the 4-9 Immortal Sect's Dao Plaza to watch the live broadcast. As for the other powerful beings of lower cultivation bases, they could only watch the broadcast on the 100,000 small screens over the fallen Phoenix grasslands. This was the most important event in history, and if they didn't restrict the flow of people, the entire 4-9 Immortal Sect would probably explode from the sheer number of people. 9 of the 10 days of preparation had passed in the blink of an eye. The number of onlookers who had gathered on the plains of the fallen Phoenix had exceeded 10 million. And Lin's flesh crawled upon seeing this. These spectators were actually spectators outside of the army. After all, the army was stationed at the front lines to prevent the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army from attacking the human army in a fit of rage. These tens of millions of living beings had traveled from all over the world to watch the live broadcast. Why would they come here when they could also watch the live broadcast from their base? The reason was very simple. They were here to freeload the atmosphere. And Lin almost vomited blood upon hearing this. If he were to gather all of these spectators, they would be able to form an invincible super legion. Of course, there were also a terrifying number of powerful beings who had the right to enter the 4-9 Immortal Sect's Dao Plaza. There were over 100 soul formation stage powerful beings, over 100 return to void stage mighty figures, and 15 Dao integration stage super mighty figures. Even the paramount god of the ghost tribe of the opposite shore realm, Patriarch Zhuyin, had disguised himself as a normal soul formation stage handsome male to accompany Li Yin. With such a lineup, they would be able to accompany Lin in breaking through the heavenly gate. Not only were the spectators astonished, but even the pavilion lords, elders, and disciples of the 4-9 Immortal Sect were astonished. There were simply too many powerful beings present. Was it really a good idea for all of them to come and watch the live broadcast in such a dire situation? All of the disciples of the 4-9 Immortal Sect were extremely excited. They were extremely excited and proud to see so many mighty figures spectating from their own sect. Right at this moment, the Celestial Dharch and Emperor Ziwei tore through space and arrived. Their arrival immediately attracted everyone's attention. And Lin's heart jolted as he stared at the two of them with a scorching gaze. Chapter 1681. The two mighty figures that Lin had been waiting for the most had finally appeared. It wasn't because of how bad *SS these two mighty figures were. Instead, it was because they had obtained something valuable from the Langya Forbidden Realm, and that item was related to him. Just what was it? And Lin's obsessive-compulsive disorder was tormented by Lin Junjun's words for an entire 9 days. Now it was finally time to reveal the truth. War God Lin, long time no see, Emperor Ziwei greeted with a smile. Ziwei, you're still as handsome and dashing as ever. And Lin shamelessly sucked up to Emperor Ziwei. He couldn't help it. Who told Emperor Ziwei to treat him so well? He actually spent 9 days on the road just to get him something good. Ha ha! War God Lin, you're only so sweet when you know something good has happened to you. The Celestial Dharch clasped his hands behind his back with a smile on his face. He stepped through the air, and his golden and white imperial robes fluttered in the absence of any wind. The Celestial Dharch didn't need to release any aura at all. His presence was extremely eye-catching and inspired awe and veneration. So what did you guys obtain from the Langya Forbidden Realm? And Lin didn't beat around the bush as he asked with curiosity and excitement. You'll have to thank Emperor Ziwei for this. He's expended a great deal of effort on this matter. The Celestial Dharch pointed at the white-haired man beside him. Just the forging of that item took him over 100 years. If it weren't for the fact that this battle was extremely crucial, he wouldn't have forced this treasure out. After all, there was still a period of nourishment left, so he used his own power of the divine Tao to make up for this shortcoming. And Lin was astonished, and he turned to Emperor Ziwei with even more curiosity in his eyes. Emperor Ziwei raised his head proudly. 100 years ago, You gave me a divine tool and an immortal tool, asking me to forge a sealing divine tool for you. Do you remember? Anlin came to a sudden realization. That was indeed the case. Other than the sword to send you safely on your way, he had also commissioned Ziwei to forge a new sealing-type divine artifact. He did not expect Ziwei to forge it for more than 100 years. Originally, the materials you gave me were far inferior to the white cherry god-killing sword's grade, so the divine weapon you created would at most be a beginner divine weapon. Emperor Ziwei's expression was frosty as he looked up into the sky with his hawk-like eyes. However, I've displayed the standard that the number 1 tool refinement master of the Kingdom of the Nine States should possess. I found an extremely good forging paradise to forge. That is the profound heaven ice spring in the Langya Forbidden Land. There, he forged your divine artifact for over 100 years and fixed all of its flaws, forcibly turning it from a beginner divine artifact to a mid-grade divine artifact. Hiss. Anlin took a deep breath, and he was filled with admiration and awe. Ziwei, you're the best, Anlin said excitedly. He almost couldn't help but want to hug her. He had only wanted Emperor Ziwei to forge an elementary rank divine tool, but who would have thought that Emperor Ziwei would forge him an intermediate rank divine tool? What more could he ask for from such a considerate man? All right, what's there to be proud of? Ziwei waved his hand with a disgusted expression. I admit, I'm very dedicated to my work, to the point where even I feel like I've been taken advantage of by you. However, the things you did after you came back made me feel like all of my hard work wasn't in vain. You have the right to possess this divine tool. Anlin was extremely touched. Not only did Ziwei forge and upgrade the divine tool for him, but he was also complimenting him. What a great man! Then, Emperor Ziwei, where is my divine tool? Anlin asked excitedly. I'll take it out right away. Emperor Ziwei pressed a finger onto his storage ring. Light flashed as the terrifying energy fluctuations of the divine tool proliferated through the air, giving everyone a sense of its extraordinariness. Anlin's bright eyes widened with anticipation. Then, his expression gradually became sluggish, a thick and heavy shell that was flickering with green light and releasing an air of eternity, with lines of uncanny craftsmanship and an extremely mysterious charm, was revealed in front of him just like that. That's right, it was a green turtle shell. Anlin was dumbstruck. Emperor Ziwei, you didn't take out the wrong thing, did you? I want a sealing divine tool. This is a turtle shell. Can you explain to me how a turtle shell has anything to do with sealing? Emperor Ziwei clasped his hands behind his back and puffed out his chest with a smile. That's simple. Just place the turtle shell on your enemy's body, and you'll be able to seal their abilities. Why was he acting so arrogant? Anlin was about to throw up a mouthful of blood. This divine tool was King Weird. Where did his confidence come from? Mr. Anlin, there's another pleasant surprise. It's also a pleasant surprise that it can become an intermediate rank divine tool instead of an elementary rank divine tool, Emperor Ziwei said with a mysterious expression. Anlin grabbed onto Emperor Ziwei's sleeve as if he had grasped onto a life-saving straw. What pleasant surprise! Is it because this turtle shell can transform into other forms, such as a cross or a chain? Emperor Ziwei shook his head. No, it's because it can still be worn by you. Anlin, is this some kind of lame joke? Anlin's lips twitched. What the *CK? What the hell was this turtle shell that could seal the enemy's abilities on him? Was he trying to seal himself? It's not a joke. Not only can it seal the enemy, but it can also protect itself. As long as you recharge it before battle, you can even defend yourself against a God of Creation stage attack. Emperor Ziwei spoke with a smug expression. Anlin's eyes widened. Are you serious? Of course. Not only is it a sealing divine tool, but it's also a life-saving divine tool. Emperor Ziwei said in a meaningful voice. Not only that, but it's also a silent turtle shell. It has an artifact spirit, but it doesn't like to talk, so it can keep you quiet. I give this a bad review. A turtle shell with a lively lowly voice is the way to go, Unlin blurted out. Emperor Ziwei. By the way, it's normal for a turtle divine tool to not speak, but is its voice nice to listen to? Unlin was a man with a fetish for voices. He would only be satisfied if their voices were as pleasant as Little Lan's, Su Qianyun's, or Big Brother Ching's. I forgot. Emperor Ziwei replied with an awkward expression. Unlin. To tell you the truth, I've been hammering it for over 100 years, and it's only said one sentence. I really can't remember its voice anymore. Emperor Ziwei sighed with resignation. Unlin's face convulsed. This divine tool isn't mute, is it? Emperor Ziwei, you must be hearing things because you're too lonely, right? No. Emperor Ziwei shook his head with a firm expression. It did say one sentence, and I remember it very clearly. That was the first sentence it said when it upgraded from an elementary rank divine tool to an intermediate rank divine tool. What did it say? Unlin asked. Ah, I upgraded, Emperor Ziwei replied. Unlin. That's it? Emperor Ziwei shook his head. That's it. Alright, then I'll just pretend it's mute. Unlin had a look of despair on his face. Upgrading from an elementary rank divine tool to an intermediate rank divine tool was an extremely glorious and joyous occasion. However, this idiot only said 5 words, and it was over. There was no difference between a divine tool like this being able to speak and not speak. Unlin released his blood essence to refine the turtle divine tool before putting it on. The front and back of the turtle divine tool were both very thick, but they were very light and fitted him quite well. Unlin nodded with satisfaction. Even though it was a little green, the sense of heaviness and energy fluctuations from the turtle divine tool really gave him a sense of security. Chapter 1682. Emperor Ziwei, thank you for giving me this new present. I really like it. Unlin spoke with a sincere expression of gratitude. He was truly satisfied with this divine tool. War God Unlin, I'm glad you like it. Emperor Ziwei was also very pleased to see that Unlin liked the divine tool. Su Xiaolan patted Unlin's tough turtle shell with a faint smile on her face. Not bad. I feel like, Unlin, you and tortoises are quite fated to be together. Unlin's chest constricted upon hearing this, and an expression of grief and indignation appeared on his face. I've already tried very hard to ignore this issue. Why do you have to rub salt in the wound? He and tortoises really were fated to be together by a mysterious fate. Tianqingji's core inheritance was the evading turtle technique, Gu Yu's turtle shell defensive treasure, and now a turtle shell divine tool. Unlin couldn't help but look up at the sky. He was a powerful being, not a cowardly tortoise. By the way, Emperor Ziwei, what should I call this divine tool? I can't call it a turtle divine tool, can I? Unlin suddenly realized that he didn't even know the name of his own divine tool yet. It hasn't been officially named yet. As its first owner, you can give it a more resounding name after refining it. Emperor Ziwei smiled. Most tool refinement masters would choose to name their own divine tool, but Emperor Ziwei didn't have that hobby. He left all of the rights to the new owner. Otherwise, how could Yi Ling's stupid name of the sword that sends you safely on your way be named successfully? Unlin fell into deep thought upon hearing that he had the right to name his divine tool. Su Xiaolan, Tina, and the others rolled their eyes. They didn't have any expectations at all. They could almost imagine the fate of this turtle shell divine tool with Unlin's terrible naming skills. It was either going to be called a small turtle divine tool or a large turtle shell divine tool. In any case, it wasn't going to be a very good name. This is an intermediate rank divine tool, so how about I call it? Unlin paused momentarily before continuing, Xian Wu Heaven Sealing Shell. Hiss, Tina, Su Xiaolan, Dongfang Zhuangshi, Dabai, and the other spectators all drew a sharp intake of breath. Unlin's naming style wasn't right. Since when did he have such a valiant and domineering name? Even the turtle shell on Enlin's body trembled slightly, as if saying that it liked it very much. Xiao Hong was still fuming with rage in the distance, and she almost threw a sun at Enlin upon hearing this. Why can I, a mighty figure at the return to void pinnacle stage, be called Xiao Hong while a turtle shell can be called Xian Wu heaven sealing shell? This was discrimination, this was blatant differential treatment. Little Mushroom in Tina's pokeball would most likely empathize with what was going on here, and it would give Enlin 99 angry and cursing emojis. However, no one knew what Enlin was thinking. Wearing a turtle shell was already embarrassing enough, so he had to come up with a domineering name to save face. Even if he was going to be a turtle, he had to make it the best, and that was Xian Wu. Furthermore, his Xian Wu could suppress even the heavens, so it was naturally going to be Xian Wu heaven sealing shell. Was it domineering? Was it bad *SS? Big Brother and is so bad *SS woof. Dubai played the role of a bootlicker. Emperor Ziwei was also very pleased, and a smile appeared on his face. The name Enlin had come up with had lived up to his 100 years of forging. Immediately afterward, Enlin eagerly charged the Xian Wu heaven sealing shell with energy. Not only was this divine tool extremely tough, but it could also unleash all types of energy at once to defend against all types of attacks, so it was definitely going to be very powerful. Representatives of the heavenly Tao were indeed very powerful, and those who had mastered the paramount laws of the heavenly Tao were absolutely invincible. However, representatives of the heavenly Tao were extremely restricted. They were already restricted by the will of the heavenly Tao on the Tai Chu continent, and they were even more restricted in the divine mirror world. The powers of the heavenly gods that they unleashed at this time might not even be able to break through Enlin's turtle shell. Enlin continued to charge the turtle shell as he inhaled and exhaled energy to recover. Before he knew it, another day had passed. Enlin had finally finished charging the turtle shell. Over 100,000 spectating powerful beings had also gathered at the 4-9 Immortal Sect's Tao Plaza. Over 10 million living beings from all over the world had also gathered on the grasslands outside the 4-9 Immortal Sect. As the sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal Sect and the initiator of the execution of the heavenly gods, Enlin once again stood on the dais of the massive Tao Plaza and faced the crowd of over 100,000 powerful beings. These powerful beings were all at the soul formation stage or above. There were over 100 return to void stage mighty figures, 17 Tao integration stage super mighty figures, and one spectating god of creation. In the face of such a vast number of powerful beings, Enlin was still very calm and collected. In fact, he was even a little excited. Welcome, fellow cultivators, to witness this unprecedentedly grand execution. Enlin looked down at the countless powerful beings gathered below the dais. All of them were mighty figures who were renowned throughout the world, yet they had all gathered at the 4-9 Immortal Sect. Just how powerful were they? Let's cut to the chase. Let me introduce the members of the God-slaying team who will be accompanying me this time. Enlin greeted the scorching and reverent gazes of the powerful beings below the dais with a smile. Elder Dongfang Zhuangshi of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, the Divine Phoenix Maiden of the Flame Pavilion, and Little Huang. Many of the living beings were at a loss when they saw the ordinary-looking middle-aged man. However, those who knew the inside story were astonished. The 4-9 Immortal Sect was about to become even more powerful. A graceful figure in a jade dress descended onto the dais. Regardless of whether it was her breathtaking beauty or her prideful and holy disposition, all of the female cultivators present paled in comparison. This was truly an alluring sight. A small phoenix with gorgeous wings followed beside the woman. It was also very eye-catching. Its body was very small, yet many ferocious beasts below the dais immediately prostrated themselves. This was because a natural bloodline might made them instinctively submit to it. The The 3-Dao integration stage super mighty figures of the 4-9 immortal sect had arrived. Enlin continued to introduce Celestial Tharch of the Kingdom of the Nine States, Celestial Court, and Emperor Ziwei. 2 men with extraordinary bearings instantly appeared on the dais. Countless powerful beings looked respectfully at the 2 men on the dais. Their names had already resounded throughout the entire continent, and their images were widely known. There was no need for Enlin to introduce them. The 4th heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect, the ancient Dragon Empress. A commotion broke out among the spectators once again upon hearing this. The heaven-crushing sect was also participating in this execution of the heavenly god. This was definitely an extraordinary event. A tall and slender woman in a colorful dragon emperor robe also stepped onto the dais. She was beautiful and had a hint of valiance in her features. If the heaven-crushing sect wanted to restrict the potential power of the 4-9 immortal sect, mobilizing a heavenly disciple was already the most they could do. Even so, this was enough to show the heaven-crushing sect's attitude. They fully supported this operation and stood on the same side as the 4-9 immortal sect. The ancient Dragon Empress was undoubtedly one of the most eye-catching beings present. However, the god-slaying team was far more powerful than they could imagine. Enlin continued to announce in a loud voice, Spirit Lake Realm, Black Spirit Snake Empress, White Spirit Snake Empress. Western Buddhist Kingdom, Battling Buddha. Holy Palace of Martial Tao, Chaotic Element Martial Lord. Spring Divine Tree Realm, Patriarch Shinting. Scorching Blood Realm, Dark Thunder Emperor. Chapter 1683. The Spirit Lake Realm was meant to deal with the heavenly human tribe on the southern front. Now that the heavenly human tribe on the southern front had been completely wiped out, Black Spirit Snake and White Spirit Snake naturally had the spare energy to participate in Enlin's grand undertaking. As for the battling Buddha of the Buddhist kingdom, this was the first time Enlin had seen him, but he was not much different from what he had imagined. Regardless of whether it was that pair of golden glassy eyes that seemed to be able to see through all things in this world, or that unyielding battle intent that still stood proudly despite having been through hundreds of battles, or even the great mercy that was hidden within its destructive aura, Enlin could clearly sense all of it. The great sage, equal to heaven, Sun Wukong. This name carried a lot of weight. His experiences and rise to prominence were legendary. He was definitely a pioneer in defying the natural order and crushing the heavens. Even though he had attained enlightenment and become a Buddha, his unique aptitude had not been buried. Under the baptism of the heaven-crushing sect, this dusty pearl had once again shone with dazzling brilliance. The battling Buddha's cultivation base was already at the Tao integration pinnacle stage, far surpassing that of his old enemy, the former war god of the celestial court, Yang Jian, as well as all of the gods and Buddhas of the Western paradise. In terms of combat prowess, he was most likely only inferior to the Gautama Buddha. Chun had once told Enlin that not only was the battling Buddha extremely proficient in heaven-crushing techniques, but he was also able to comprehend and use the paramount heaven-crushing technique. As such, he was already a candidate to become the 5th heavenly disciple. If the battling Buddha agreed to become the 5th heavenly disciple, he could even officially become the 5th heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect. This was extremely bad *SS, almost as bad *SS as Enlin. It looked like the Western Paradise was also taking this mission very seriously. They had even sent such a powerful trump card, so Enlin naturally welcomed them with open arms. Sun Wukong landed lightly on the platform, and his Buddhist robe appeared a little comical on his body. However, this comical aspect was obscured by his extremely handsome features. That's right, he was very handsome. Regardless of whether it was his chiseled features, his deep and dazzling eyes, or his intricate nose, they were all impeccably perfect. Even the golden monkey fur on his face was extremely soft and supple, and onlookers couldn't help but want to stroke it. In terms of looks, Sun Wukong was indeed the most handsome monkey among all monkeys. The battling Buddha was the clown's idol. Whether it was in the past or now, the clown had always used it as a role model. When the battling Buddha first arrived at the 4-9 Immortal sect, Xiao Chou went over to greet him in a warm and enthusiastic manner. The victorious fighting Buddha was also very easygoing, and he even dragged Xiao Chou along to exchange insights and spar with him. All of this moved the clown to tears, and he couldn't help but cry a few times. Normal living beings found the scene of the clown and the Monkey King sitting together and discussing the Tao extremely bizarre, and there were a few times when they couldn't help but burst into tears. Of course, it wasn't because he was touched, but because it was too painful to look at. Beauty and ugliness complement each other. The Monkey King was simply too beautiful. His beauty further accentuated the clown's ugliness. Almost all living beings were shocked by this scene. There were even reporters silently snapping photos. This was an extremely historic scene, and it would probably become one of the most sought-after photos on the Tai-Chu continent. At this moment, Goku was standing next to Enlin. Even on such an important occasion, he still winked at Enlin. "Hey, brother Enlin, what happened? After this heavenly god execution battle, how about you come with me to the Buddhist kingdom's moving cloud mountain? It's very comfortable to fight there. Not only is there a lot of vital energy there, but we won't damage any plants either. We can fight as much as we want." So even Brother Sun is being environmentally friendly when fighting now? I can't help it. I fight in other places in the heavenly realm, and Buddha slaps me into the ground every time. Then, I have to eat dirt and repent under the 5 elemental creation palm. Enlin sympathized with Goku from the bottom of his heart. Thinking back to when the great sage equaling heaven was wreaking havoc in the celestial court, he was suppressed by Buddha for several hundred years. Now that he had become a Buddha, his cultivation base had advanced by leaps and bounds, but he was still suppressed by Buddha even after wreaking havoc in the heavenly realm. When would this monkey truly be able to escape from Buddha's grasp? The battling Buddha's appearance caused another stir among the spectating powerful beings. However, what truly caused a stir was the chaotic element martial lord of the Holy Temple of Martial Tao. What was the Holy Temple of Martial Tao? This was the Holy Temple of the Holy Martial Clan, one of the 10 Realm Guardian tribes. The Holy Martial Clan had always maintained a neutral stance in this war that had swept across the entire continent. The chaotic element Martial Lord was one of the 3 founding elders of the Holy Temple of Martial Tao. His appearance not only made the team even more terrifying, but it was also a clear declaration of neutrality. The Holy Martial Clan was making a declaration to the world. They were no longer neutral. They were going to kill heavenly humans and slay heavenly gods. A single stone created 1,000 ripples. There were countless broadcasting crystal screens on the Tai-Chu continent, and they transmitted this news to the entire continent as quickly as possible. The Holy Martial Clan had officially joined the battle against the Heavenly Tao. It was quite clear. The destruction of the Southern Heavenly Gate and Northern Heavenly Gate, as well as the public execution of heavenly gods, gave the Holy Martial Clan a lot of confidence. The dominoes that Enlin had pushed had finally reached a climax. As for Enlin's introduction of Patriarch Shen Ting of the Spring Divine Tree Realm and the Dark Thunder Emperor of the Scorching Blood Impure Realm, they were nothing special. There was nothing they could do about it. Those people were simply too dazzling. Soon, the team that was going to publicly execute heavenly gods was assembled. They stood on the platform and had already concealed their auras, but all the living beings present were still struck by a sense of pressure and fear. Enlin, Dongfang Zhuangshi, the Divine Phoenix Maiden, the Phoenix, the Celestial Dharch, Emperor Ziwei, Empress Black Spirit Snake, Empress White Spirit Snake, the Ancient Dragon Empress, the Battling Buddha, the Chaotic Element Martial Lord, Patriarch Shen Ting, and the Dark Thunder Emperor. There were a total of 13 Tao Integration Stage Super Mighty figures. They were either renowned overlords across the entire continent or legendary figures that had been passed down by word of mouth. Now, they were all gathered together with only one goal in mind. Unlin raised his arms and yelled, "Now, please follow me to kill heavenly humans. Kill heavenly gods. Kill heavenly humans. Kill heavenly gods. Kill heavenly humans. Kill heavenly gods." The celestial Dharch and the battling Buddha were also yelling. It wasn't just the mighty figures who were yelling. Even the powerful beings spectating the live broadcast were also yelling. Countless living beings spectating the live broadcast were also yelling involuntarily. Kill heavenly humans and heavenly God. These 6 words were originally very taboo, but under the influence of such an atmosphere, many living beings still began to yell along. Boom! A bolt of white lightning flashed. The screen suddenly turned white. All the powerful beings present were also struck by a vast expanse of white, and they couldn't see anything. After the light disappeared, Unlin and the others disappeared from the platform. This, before all the living beings had a chance to be astonished, the gargantuan screen lit up. Inside the screen was a brand new world, and Unlin and the others had already appeared in this new world. Chapter 1684. An extremely unfamiliar world appeared on the gigantic screen. The breathing of all the living beings became hurried. They were nervous and excited. The god-slaying team had already gone to another world. This was a world where heavenly gods were imprisoned. Unlin and the others were about to slay the heavenly gods. Although they didn't know how they had entered that world, they knew that this was a world created by a god of creation. Normal mystic realms were unable to trap heavenly God. Only the heavens could trap the heavens. Each of Unlin and the others had their own screen, and they could see the battle situation of each team member. It had to be said that Bai Ling and Tina were quite considerate in organizing this live stream. Suddenly, another image appeared on the screen. A gigantic earthy yellow divine dragon flew through the sky, blotting out the sun. On its back, there were a dozen or so figures that struck fear into the hearts of onlookers. "It's the mountain-moving divine dragon, the primordial demonic bear, and the thousand-change divine monkey." A beast tribe powerful being blurted out the names of these mighty beings. Those 7 extremely handsome beings exuding boundless majesty should be the Heaven Pioneer stage great generals of the Northern Heavenly Gate. As for those 2 heavenly human tribe powerful beings wearing cloud and mist robes, they should be the heavenly gods guarding the Northern Heavenly Gate. Also, those 3 beings with divine halos in the very center must be the heavenly gods. The billions of living beings became more and more astonished as they watched. Even though they were separated by a screen and a world, they could still sense the majestic might of the heavens descending upon them. They couldn't even muster up any thoughts of resistance. For some reason, everyone's morale was now starting to become tense and uneasy. The heavenly gods were indeed trapped in cages, but these were ferocious beasts that had never been seen before. Unlin and the others couldn't execute the ferocious beasts outside the cages. Instead, they had to enter the cages to execute them. Thus, the question was, could Unlin really be a good executioner? If they weren't careful, they might become the ones being executed. It was no wonder that the billions of living beings were thinking this way. Heaven Pioneer stage great generals were just barely comparable to Tao integration stage super mighty figures. Heavenly gods who stood at the pinnacle of heaven and earth didn't look like they would just resign themselves to death. That was indeed the case. However, Unlin couldn't delay any longer. If he delayed any longer, other variables would appear. If the heavenly gods seized the opportunity to escape from the divine mirror world, then it would become even more difficult to kill them. The heavenly god had to die, and he had to be executed quickly. The super almighties who joined the God Massacre team were all willing to give up their lives for the land. They had long been mentally prepared to fight to the death. Shui Zhantian flapped his little wings as he hovered above the stage with a microphone. The battle hadn't even begun yet, but he was already providing an emotional commentary on the battle. It conveyed the God Massacre team's beliefs and determination to the living beings in the world. Many living beings' eyes were brimming with tears as they listened. They were moved and astonished by the God Massacre team's unwavering determination. Under the instigation of the adorable Snowball, Unlin and the others had already become immortal legendary heroes on the continent before the battle even started. Divine Mirror World. This world is very powerful. The celestial Thearcha's eyes narrowed slightly. There was a hint of excitement and anticipation in his eyes. I've never seen such a vibrant world. Everything here is in harmony with nature. This wasn't the first time that Unlin had heard this type of praise, and he was already used to it. Senior Unlin, what do we do now? A beautiful snake woman in a white dress floated beside Unlin as she asked with blinking eyes. Peculiar expressions appeared on the faces of many of the super almighties present upon hearing this. Which of these mighty figures hadn't lived for over 10,000 years? Perhaps only White Spirit Snake could refer to a little guy who was only 100 years old as senior. A cold glint flashed through Unlin's eyes. A faint smile appeared on his face. We'll just wait here. They know we're here. Let's put some distance between us. All of the super almighties dispersed upon hearing this. Each of their attacks was earth-shattering, so it wasn't a good idea to group together. I'm going to take a heavenly god. Don't fight with me. The battling Buddha chortled as he flew into the distance atop a rainbow cloud. 5 heavenly gods. I should be able to take one too. The celestial Tharch also smiled warmly. My heaven-crushing sect is also going to take down a heavenly god today, the ancient dragon empress said in an indifferent voice. Senior Unlin, we also want a heavenly god. White Spirit Snake held onto Black Spirit Snake's hand with a dainty smile. Her Majesty has been preparing for a long time. It's time for us to unleash a new combination technique. Little Bai, shut up. Black Spirit Snake scolded with a cold expression. White Spirit Snake stuck out her little tongue, but she didn't seem to have done anything wrong. Instead, she gave Unlin a reassuring look. A smile appeared on Unlin's face. Leave the last heavenly god to me. The most terrifying heavenly gods that normal people would try to avoid had already been taken down by all of the mighty figures, so it was quite apparent just how confident they were. Only Dongfang Zhuangshi, Su Xiaolan, the Phoenix, Emperor Ziwei, the Chaotic Element Martial Lord, Patriarch Shenting, and the Dark Thunder Emperor were left to battle the 3 mythological beasts and 7 great generals. Unlin brought out the Starless Sky of Slaughter Formation Disc and Karma Star Protection Divine Disc from his storage ring. He couldn't hold back in this battle. He had to make sure that nothing went wrong. Elsewhere in the Divine Mirror World, the mountain-moving Divine Dragon let loose an enraged roar before flying toward Unlin and the others. They've brought many powerful beings with them, and they're clearly targeting us. Are they trying to kill us? It looks like the living beings of this world have a far too shallow understanding of us. The heavenly soul god's gray robe flapped in the wind as a sinister smile appeared on its face. I've had enough of this *T2I place. I'm going to kill them all. Wu Ming roared with rage on her face. They're also outsiders, so there's no need to hold back. Kill them all. The heavenly illusion god sat on its throne, and even though its face was obscured by illusionary mist, one could still sense its rage. The heavenly reality god smiled. Wu Ming, Long Kuei, you can activate your divine halos without any restrictions in this battle. Kill them all. Wu Ming and Long Kuei both faltered slightly before bowing. Yes. This command meant that they were going to unleash all of their divine halos at the cost of their lives in order to recover a portion of their god of creation stage power and crush their enemies. The heavenly gods didn't want to wait any longer. They were going to slaughter them all. Unlin had already set up a double formation again. A little girl carved from jade once again appeared in the center of the formation. This was the artifact spirit of the Karma Star Protection Divine Disc, as well as the formation spirit of the formation, Xiao Fu. Enlin was extremely excited upon seeing the little girl. Hurry, Xiao Fu, give me another wave of poisonous milk. Tell them that I'm hopeless and that I can only wait for my death. Xiao Fu. Chapter 1685. The Karma Star Protection Formation shuddered slightly, and the Big Dipper almost hurtled toward Enlin. Xiao Fu wore a frosty expression. I don't have a master as shameless as you. If you want to fight the heavenly gods, then fight. If you don't want to fight, then piss off. No, I'm the one who piss off. Enlin. It seemed like his favorable impression of him had plummeted. Wasn't it just a small bump? I was wrong. Don't be angry, Xiao Fu. Just calculate the odds of victory for me and give me some useful suggestions. Enlin's voice softened slightly. Xiao Fu chuckled coldly. No. Enlin. Divine Weapon Origin Energy. Enlin injected his Divine Weapon Origin Energy into the Karma Star Protection Divine Disc. Xiao Fu humphed with a blush on her face. Does it count? Enlin asked. No. Xiao Fu pursed her lips stubbornly. Divine Weapon Origin Energy. Ah. Xiao Fu's slender legs drew together as she repressed a certain feeling. Does it count? Enlin continued. No. Not Divine Weapon Origin Energy. After a series of struggles, Xiao Fu finally succumbed to Enlin's tyrannical power. Her entire body was limp, her hands supporting the formation as she sat in the center of the formation like a duck. Her eyes were watery, and there was a hint of humiliation in her satisfaction as she said, In this battle, your chances of winning against the heavenly god are actually 50-50, but your chances of survival are still the lowest. Enlin's chest constricted upon hearing this. He was clearly not the weakest among this group of people. Xiao Fu continued, As for your opponent, I suggest that you choose to fight the heavenly reality god. You have the highest odds of victory and will have a great impact on the outcome of the battle. Kill it as quickly as possible. Enlin nodded with a serious expression. The little loli in front of him did have some ability. Enlin was actually thinking the same thing as her. He was going to win this battle as quickly as he could. The power of the stars continued to pour into the formation, and it became more and more abundant. The thunderous roar of a massive dragon erupted from the distance. The expressions of the heavenly Dharch and the others turned solemn. They were finally here. A terrifying aura swept through heaven and earth like a massive, boundless tsunami, and even the most powerful Tao integration stage super mighty figures faltered upon sensing its devastating might. Idiot, look over here. Come and hit me. Enlin waved at the round heavenly reality god with a despicable smile on his face, instantly breaking the tense standoff. Enlin, he's dead for sure this time. The heavenly reality god let out an enraged roar and charged toward Enlin at an extremely fast speed. Enlin's lips curled up. This goading method was too easy. It was also at this moment that heavenly goddess Wu Ming flipped a hand over, and a twisted green longsword appeared. Her body drifted through the air as she also charged forward. Enlin, I'm going to kill you. The heavenly soul god transformed into a gray mist and traveled through space. Enlin, your end is here. Die, die, die. Heavenly god Long Kuei also pounced toward Enlin. Let's kill Enlin first. The heavenly illusion god also transformed into a rainbow streak of light. Enlin's legs gave out from under him, and he stared at the scenes unfolding before his eyes in astonishment. Holy F***ck. Why are 5 heavenly gods charging toward me at the same time? Enlin was on the verge of tears. He had just taunted the heavenly reality god, so there was no splash damage. Why were the other 4 heavenly gods pouncing toward him like hungry wolves? This is a team battle. Can't you see that the other heavenly gods are glaring at you? Can't you at least give us some face? Thankfully, his teammates weren't idiot. The other side wanted to kill Enlin, so how could they allow that to happen? Ha ha. Heavenly illusion god? I'll shatter your 3,000 dreams. An arrogant and unruly laughter rang out, carrying with it the arrogance of the clouds. A cudgel fell from the sky. The cudgel glowed with a golden light, as if it were an eternal reality, and it struck the rainbow streak of light, forcing the heavenly illusion god's true body out. Come, come, come. Fight me for 300 rounds. The battling Buddha chortled with glee as he swung his golden-banded staff through the air with astonishing heaven-crushing intent. The heavenly illusion god's body fluttered through the air as it evaded the battling Buddha's attacks, as if it didn't even have a chance to retaliate. Heavenly goddess Wu Ming's sword strikes were also blocked by two top-rate sword immortals. White Spirit Snake wielded her yin and yang dual swords, while Black Spirit Snake wielded her realm creation evil vanquishing sword. The celestial Dharch charged toward heavenly god Long Kuei, and their fists collided as terrifying energy tore through the ground within a radius of over 50 kilometers. The heavenly soul god was already quite close to Enlin. A tall and graceful figure descended from the sky. Her long and slender legs emitted an endless brilliance. The brilliance was so heaven-defying that it could destroy the heavens. Just like that, it smashed heavily onto the gray fog. Foot of the heavenly Tao. Bam! Golden energy surged through the air. The heavenly soul god's blood-curdling cries reverberated through the air. His misty figure was kicked out, and his body caved in, falling straight to the ground. Enlin stared at the scenes unfolding before his eyes with astonishment. Holy F***ck. When did the ancient dragon empress become so ferocious? She sent a heavenly god flying with a kick? Wait, I can sense from her aura that kick has already wounded the heavenly soul god. Xiao Fu wore a resigned expression. Master, have you forgotten that this is the divine mirror world? Enlin instantly came to a realization. The powers of the heavenly gods in the divine mirror world were restricted by 30 to 40% due to the restrictions on the Tai Chu continent. However, the ancient dragon empress was using a heaven-crushing technique, so she wasn't being restricted at all. As a result, the ancient dragon empress was being completely crushed. His powers of the heavenly gods were actually being restricted by 70 to 80%. However, he actually had a better and more efficient way to deal with a heavenly god, Xiao Fu. The heavenly gods have been weakened, and we have super mighty figures who are extremely proficient in heaven-crushing techniques. We clearly have the upper hand in this battle, so why do you say that we only have a 50-50 chance of victory against the heavenly gods? Enlin was perplexed. Xiao Fu pointed at battle god Wu Ming and battle god Long Kuei in the distance. Their powers are fake, so they haven't been weakened. Enlin nodded in agreement as he recalled the insane combat prowess of the heavenly gods unleashing their 9 divine halos. He had battled heavenly goddess Lin Yu before, and he had experienced just how terrifying a divine heaven stage heavenly human was. However, at this moment, the battle became quite intense from the get-go. All of the living beings present were paying close attention to the battle. There was even a heavenly god-level existence that was injured in a single battle. This made the living beings even more excited, and the blood in their hearts was also stirred up. Fighting against the heavens was a great joy. Right at this moment, the heavenly reality god had already charged toward Enlin and crashed into the formation. A mighty heavenly voice sounded in his ears. Enlin, are you ready to die? Enlin clasped his hands behind his back with a faint smile. I'm ready to kill you. Chapter 1686. The heavenly reality god was most proud of the incredibly beautiful divine halo on its head. Its divine halo began to release the most perfect light in the world. That light could make all living beings fall in love and yearn for it. The millions of living beings on the Tai Chu continent were dazzled by that indescribable light through the cold screen. Expressions of infatuation appeared on their faces, and they felt an urge to immediately chase after that light. It was as if everything else was fake apart from that light. Enlin stood within the formation, completely ignoring the light before him. The heavenly reality god's round body turned, and the black satellites revolving around it also began to rotate rapidly. Flying fire meteor. Countless black satellites shot forth at a speed so fast that even Enlin found it difficult to keep up. However, there was no need for Enlin to keep up. The formation had already begun to operate on its own. The Big Dipper fused with Enlin's heaven-crushing intent to form an airtight barrier that kept the black satellites at bay. At the same time, a galaxy of stars appeared in the sky. Red stars rained down, each of which contained a terrifying killing intent. In the previous battle, even the 5 of you heavenly gods were unable to instantly break through my formation. Who gave you the courage to barge into my formation alone? Enlin's gaze turned cold, and his aura soared to its peak. Countless red stars imbued with killing intent, each of which was powerful enough to penetrate the body of a Tao integration stage mythological beast, rained down upon the heavenly reality god. The heavenly reality god was unable to ignore this attack. Its body quickly turned, and a black cyclone formed around its body. This cyclone contained a terrifying destructive power that could annihilate all of the red stars that crashed into it. The entire process lasted for 10 seconds, and it expended almost all of the starless sky of Slaughter Formation's power. After the heavenly reality god managed to block all of their attacks, its power began to wane. It didn't even have a chance to catch its breath before a white figure appeared in front of it. An extremely dazzling golden light burst forth from the center of its palm. This palm seemed capable of shattering the galaxy and destroying all things. Heaven-crushing fourth technique, Palm of the Heavenly Tao. The golden palm enveloped an area of 50 kilometers in radius, and the heavenly reality god felt as if it had nowhere to run. Before the palm even arrived, the earth had already begun to cave in. The void began to be compressed, flattened, and even twisted. The heavenly reality god sensed Enlin's all-out aura, and a look of shock and horror appeared on its face. How could this be? It hasn't even been that long. How did your aura increase so drastically? A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face. Stupid ball, your daddy is already at the return to void intermediate stage. Bang! It was an earth-shattering collision. The heavenly reality god's round, white body actually trembled and caved in. Its divine halo shuddered violently, and cracks appeared on its surface. It let out a wail of anguish as it crashed heavily into the ground. Rumble! The earth quaked and the mountains shook. Enlin was like an undefeatable god of war. He clasped his hands behind his back and looked down at the heavenly reality god. He was not at all surprised that the heavenly reality god was in such a one-sided situation. He was able to hold his own against a heavenly god when he was only at the return to void initial stage. He was now at the return to void intermediate stage, and his power had increased drastically. No matter what, he would be able to fight a heavenly god fair and square. Moreover, the divine mirror world had weakened the power of the heavenly gods by 30 to 40%. For someone of Enlin's level of power, this battle was a one-sided slaughter. Although the living beings watching the live stream were already mentally prepared for Enlin's combat prowess, their eyelids still twitched involuntarily upon seeing this. He was able to slap a heavenly god into the ground with a single slap. Even the fourth heavenly disciple of the heaven-crushing sect, the ancient dragon empress, was no match for him. The other Tao integration stage super mighty figures on the battlefield also began to engage in fierce battles. Su Xiaolan, the Phoenix, Emperor Ziwei, and Dongfang Zhuangshi pounced toward the 7 Heaven Pioneer stage great generals. The 7 Heaven Pioneer stage great generals knew that they were no match for the 4 people before them. Thus, they quickly surrounded Su Xiaolan and the others and unleashed their power to form a unique heavenly Tao confinement formation. A vast divine might descended from the heavens as countless streaks of white holy light pierced through the air like a net. 7 massive palms over 100,000 feet in length hovered outside the white net from different angles, and all of their palms were aimed toward the 4 people within the confinement formation. A terrifying sealing power instantly descended upon the 4 of them, and this sealing power was tens of thousands of times more powerful than the spatial sealing power of a return to void stage mighty figure. Great generals couldn't battle Tao integration stage super mighty figures on their own, but they could unleash unimaginable power once they unleashed a combination spell formation. Elsewhere, Patriarch Shunting was battling the primordial demonic bear. The most powerful treant instantly transformed into a massive ancient tree over 100,000 feet in length. Countless dragon-like vines and blade-sharp branches swept toward the primordial demonic bear mercilessly, as if he were beating a disobedient child. Meanwhile, the 1,000-change divine monkey and the dark thunder emperor were even more powerful. Destructive lightning had already transformed heaven and earth into a sea of lightning. Massive waves of lightning surged through the sea of lightning as they clashed again and again. The Dark Thunder Emperor's true form was a divine lightning python with 9 massive heads. It was currently over 10,000 feet in length, but it was said that if it were to fully extend its body, it would probably be over 500 kilometers in length. It could be said that it was truly a colossus. Ferocious beasts like the 9-headed snake were nothing more than the grandson of its grandson. This divine lightning python had swallowed a Tao integration stage true dragon before, and it had even refined the true dragon's blood into the supreme snake blood of all time. Other snakes all wanted snakes to transform into WRMS, and WRMS to transform into dragons. This was the natural order of things. However, it did the exact opposite and walked the path of snakes to the extreme. Why should snakes be ranked higher than dragons? Even if it was a true dragon, I would still be able to swallow it. Not only that, but I can even swallow the heavens when I'm bad *SS. It was also a heavenly disciple candidate of the heaven-crushing sect, but its status was much lower than the battling Buddhas. However, in the heaven-crushing sect, the fact that it was a heavenly disciple candidate was a testament to its extraordinariness and power. Only half a minute had passed since the start of the battle, and the 1,000-change divine monkey had already been forced into a corner. The Dark Thunder Emperor's tail swept across its body, shattering its bones and shattering its divine body. Just when everyone thought that the 1,000-change divine monkey was going to become the first Tao integration stage super mighty figure to perish, an earth-shattering boom suddenly erupted from another direction. A golden pillar of light pierced through the heavens and the earth. Howl! The mountain-moving divine dragon's anguished wails reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The chaotic element martial lord, who was tall and slender with extremely sturdy muscles, was still in his punching stance, and the golden pillar of light had yet to dissipate. Meanwhile, the gigantic mountain-moving divine dragon, which was the size of a small continent, had already been hammered into its chest. Furthermore, the gigantic hole was still glowing. Bam 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 in the empty bloody mouth, the energy hidden in it exploded once again. Golden beams of light shot out in all directions, piercing through the internal organs of the mountain-moving divine dragon, its limbs, its wings, and its head. Everything happened almost instantaneously. The mountain-moving divine dragon was riddled with holes, and it howled in anguish as it plummeted from the sky. The chaotic element martial lord was expressionless as he punched the mountain-moving divine dragon again. It was impossible to describe what kind of fist technique this was. It was as if it contained the laws of heaven and earth, and it was as if all Tao power had been fused into this fist. It was pure and simple, but it was unstoppable. Bam! The gigantic mountain-moving divine dragon was blasted into smithereens. Chapter 1687. The enormous body of the mountain-moving divine dragon exploded into countless pieces of flesh. The chaotic element martial venerate still stood proudly in the void with a calm expression. There was not the slightest fluctuation in his eyes. However, it was this scene that made all of the living beings gasp involuntarily. Effortlessly slaying a divine dragon, was this the power of a primordial chaos martial venerable, one of the 3 founding elders of the sacred hall of martial Tao? After all, only 1 minute had passed since the start of the battle. Slaying a Tao integration stage super mighty figure in 1 minute? Who would have thought that one of the 3 most powerful beings of the holy martial clan would possess such terrifying combat prowess? Unlin also noticed the change in the distance and said in surprise, "I didn't think there would be someone more amazing than me, getting the first blood so quickly." He glanced at the heavenly reality god below him. "It looks like I'll have to hurry up as well. I can't let it catch its breath." Unlin pointed a finger forward as he spoke, and boundless golden light burst forth from his fingertip. It was as if this finger was the most dazzling light in the entire world. It pierced through space and descended from the sky. Everything in its path was annihilated into nothingness, and nothing could stand in the way of this finger. Finger of the heavenly Tao. The heavenly reality god knew that it wouldn't be able to evade this attack. An extremely beautiful light burst forth from its body, and it took the initiative to attack. Like a shooting star, it crashed into Unlin's finger of the heavenly Tao. "Everything is fake, only I am real." The white orb began to surge with a strange power, and its surface turned from pure white to multicolored. No, it should be more colorful than multicolored. It had already surpassed the definition of color. Its appearance made everything else pale in comparison. Before the clash had even begun, Unlin could already feel the might and momentum of the finger of heaven's path rapidly diminishing. It was as if this move of his was a fake, and everything that he had just done was just a bluff. Meanwhile, the heavenly reality god in front of him was becoming more and more terrifying. At first, it was just a small ball. Now, it had transformed into a majestic and boundless planet that stretched as far as the eye could see. This indescribably huge planet was smashing towards him with a sinister grin. "No, I can't be fooled. Everything in front of me is fake," Unlin kept reminding himself, but the incomparably realistic feeling told him that everything was real. And all of this was indeed real. The power of the finger of the heaven's path had truly weakened. Meanwhile, the heavenly reality god had truly become more powerful. The heavenly reality god possessed the supreme authority to manipulate reality and illusion. Unlin's panic only lasted for a split second. Then, with an even more determined attitude, he jabbed his finger toward the heavenly reality god. "So what if you're a real planet? I can still destroy it with a single finger." Even more fearless, even more desperate. The true meaning of a Taoist technique that wanted to pierce through even the heavens gushed forth, as if it had broken through some kind of shackle. After a brief moment of weakness, the might of the finger of the heavenly Tao surged once more, and the light it emitted was even brighter than before. The heavenly reality god was astonished. How could this be? Unlin's finger was actually stronger than before? Bang! There was another earth-shattering explosion. The golden shockwave swept out for hundreds of miles, leveling countless mountains and rivers. The heavenly reality god let out a wail of anguish as it crashed into the ground. A huge hole had been punctured into its smooth, round surface, and cracks appeared on its beautiful, flawless ring once again. How could this be? We've only been apart for such a short period of time. How did you suddenly become so powerful? The heavenly reality god was unable to accept this change. It had initially thought that it would be able to fight evenly against Unlin no matter what. Who would have thought that it would be crushed so thoroughly? Unlin clenched and unclenched his fists as he reminisced about a certain feeling. The situation on the surrounding battlefields was also gradually becoming clearer. The battling Buddha was suppressing the heavenly illusion god, and the ancient dragon empress was beating up the heavenly soul god. As for the battle between the celestial Tharch and Long Kuei, as well as the battle between Black Spirit Snake and White Spirit Snake and Heavenly Goddess Wu Ming, Unlin's heart jolted slightly upon hearing this. The the celestial Dharch, who had already attained enlightenment in the heaven-crushing techniques, and Black Spirit Snake and White Spirit Snake, who had received spell techniques that Nuwa had prepared for a long time, were still at a disadvantage? No, I can't drag this out any longer. It looks like it's time. You're going to become the first heavenly god to be slaughtered. He looked at the heavenly reality god as specks of golden light gathered in his hand. The heavenly reality god shuddered, and an unprecedented sense of danger surged through its entire body. However, right at this moment, heaven and earth suddenly transformed again. An earthy yellow divine Tao light blanketed the entire heavens. Waves of sorrowful wails suddenly spread to every corner of the world. Heaven and earth mourned the death of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. The mountain-moving divine dragon was already dead, so it was extremely normal for a phenomenon like this to occur. However, regardless of whether it was Enlin, the celestial Dharch, or the ancient dragon empress, all of them narrowed their eyes. There was something wrong with this phenomenon. The scope of this phenomenon was far too large. Thinking back, normal Tao integration stage super mighty figures only had a scope of tens of thousands of kilometers. As the most powerful being in the sinister spirit beast cesspool, Heavenly Venerate Yu Qiong was about to progress to the God of Creation stage, and the phenomenon only encompassed the entire sinister spirit beast cesspool. However, the phenomenon triggered by the mountain-moving divine dragon's death had no end in sight. It was boundless and boundless, as if it encompassed the entire world. This was too exaggerated. It didn't make sense at all. However, Enlin realized something. This was the divine mirror world, not the Tai Chu continent. There had never been a Tao integration stage super mighty figure in the divine mirror world, nor had there ever been a Tao integration stage super mighty figure perishing. This was the first time such a ridiculous phenomenon had occurred. An expression of concern appeared on Enlin's face as he looked up into the sky. Little Na, what happened? Are you all right? Tina had already transformed into the sky, so she could hear him as long as he spoke to the sky. Sure enough, a voice silently traveled into Enlin's ears from the sky. Giant Enlin, we're in big trouble now. Tina's panicked yet slightly excited voice sounded from afar. I've patched up the divine mirror world's flaws, and it's close to perfection. There's no room for improvement. However, a battle between heavenly gods has changed everything. The battles that have erupted here have blasted the divine mirror world over and over again. However, not only have they not destroyed the foundation of the divine mirror world, but they have instead made the fundamental elements of the divine mirror world more stable. The loose quantum particles have become more powerful and as firm as a rock. The divine mirror world has undergone another transformation. This is the first reason. A thoughtful expression appeared on Enlin's face. Is the second reason that a Tao integration stage super mighty figure has perished? That's right. When a Tao integration stage super mighty figure perishes, their divine Tao will be reciprocated to heaven and earth and all living beings in this world. A complete divine Tao that has been acknowledged by the great Tao of heaven and earth has never appeared in the divine mirror world. The reciprocation of the divine Tao to the divine mirror world has pointed a path forward for this world, as well as a path forward for the divine mirror world mighty figures. A scorching light appeared in Enlin's eyes. This was definitely an unprecedented breakthrough for the divine mirror world. Do you need me to do anything? Enlin repressed his excitement. Tina's voice sounded again. One word, kill. Chapter 1688. A sorrowful melody reverberated through the heavens. Boundless sorrow welled up in the hearts of all the living beings in the divine mirror world. Some of the more sensitive living beings even had tears streaming down their faces, even though they didn't know what they were crying about. The capital cities of the human tribe, the Spirit Fish Clan, the Dragon Tribe, the Dark Wing Tribe, All of the top-rate mighty figures who had attained the power of the divine Tao looked up at the divine Tao true intent descending from the sky with profound enlightenment in their eyes. The rock golem nodded lightly. So that's how it is. The divine Tao is one's own Tao, but it can't just be one's own Tao. Illuminate the Tao with your heart, pave the way with your Tao, and you'll be able to reach the heavens on a boundless expanse of black rocky land. The true demon-tribe monarch stood on his sword as he looked up at the sorrowful sky with his crimson eyes. I want my Tao to be acknowledged by the great Tao of heaven and earth? Interesting. I hope it's acknowledged. If it doesn't, then I'm going to carve out a more powerful Tao. All of the first-rate mighty figures accepted the blessings of the divine Tao true intent. They didn't know why this was happening, but they knew that this was a rare opportunity. Perhaps this was a blessing from a goddess. There was a very good chance that this was happening. Many of the powerful beings were already singing the praises of their goddess. If the mountain-moving divine dragon knew about this, it would probably come back to life from rage. It was clearly the one who had bestowed its blessings upon these living beings, but these living beings were thanking its enemy. On an extremely spacious battlefield, Lin and Tina had just finished their conversation. Another miserable howl resounded through the clouds. The primordial demonic bear over 10,000 meters tall was bound by countless vines, and its body convulsed as it collapsed to the ground with black blood gushing from its mouth. Its horrified and enraged eyes were still wide open, but there was no sign of life in them. A Tao integration stage mythological beast that ruled over a part of the sinister spirit beast cesspool had been poisoned to death. The towering divine tree was still twisting its countless vines. The vines that wrapped around the primordial demon bear's body opened up countless tiny mouths, constantly devouring the primordial demon bear's flesh and blood. In an instant, the primordial demon bear was completely devoured, from its skin to its bones, leaving not a single scrap behind. Patriarch Shenting had swallowed the primordial demonic bear whole. The taste of a Tao integration stage mythological beast is quite good. It's been a long time since I've had such delicious flesh. An intoxicated expression appeared on Patriarch Shenting's face, as if he was still digesting the aftertaste. Boom! Heaven and earth shook again. Heaven and earth mourned the fall of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Before the phenomenon of the mountain-moving divine dragon disappeared, a new phenomenon appeared. An extremely domineering and unyielding Tao integration stage true intent was imbued with an ancient and primordial aura, and it instantly spread to every corner of heaven and earth, encompassing the entire divine mirror world. The living beings of the divine mirror world didn't even have a chance to recover before heaven and earth mourned again. Tears streamed down their faces again and again. I'm so sad, but I don't know why. It was exactly because of this that countless living beings knelt down toward the sky with horrified expressions on their faces, chanting something, praying, or pleading. All of them wanted Goddess Tina to be happy every day and not be sad anymore. That's right, many beings who didn't know what was going on thought that Goddess Tina was unhappy, which was why these phenomena had appeared. As long as Goddess Tina was happy, everything would be fine. The sky was indeed weeping. The great Tao of heaven and earth was indeed mourning. However, Goddess Tina was very happy to continue her live streaming career. At this moment, the sky-piercing lightning python used its sharp teeth to tear apart the 1,000 transformations divine monkey's body. Another Tao integration stage super mighty figure fell, and heaven and earth mourned again. The phenomenon of divine Tao reciprocation enshrouded the divine mirror world once again. All of the enemy Tao integration stage super mighty figures had perished. This was a phenomenon created by the blood of 3 mythological beasts. This kind of extravagance could only appear when an earth-shattering battle was taking place. If it weren't for the fact that the heavenly heaven god had forcibly torn open the barrier between the two worlds, if it weren't for the fact that the 5 heavenly gods had pursued Enlil to the other world with all their might, this definitely wouldn't have happened. If something like this were to happen, it wouldn't be destruction for the divine mirror world. Instead, it would be an opportunity. Furthermore, this was a massive opportunity that wasn't inferior to the opportunity of obtaining the complete realm core. The great Tao of heaven and earth mourned incessantly. The divine Tao true intent was bestowed upon billions of living beings in this world. The battle between the god-slaying team and the heavenly gods didn't stop because of this phenomenon. In this place, heaven and earth were collapsing, and mountains and rivers were being obliterated. It was as if the entire heaven and earth were being torn to shreds. The trapping formation set up by the 7 heavenly human tribe great generals was quickly broken by the 4 people within the formation. Su Xiaolan, the Phoenix, Emperor Ziwei, and Dongfang Zhuangshi were like ferocious beasts that had escaped their restraints, and they instantly slew the 7 heavenly human tribe great generals. The two sides weren't even on the same level. Crushing. This was crushing from start to finish. The billions of living beings on the Tai Chu continent were all extremely excited as they watched the battle unfold in the divine mirror world. Only a short while had passed, but the high and mighty heavenly gods had already been beaten into the ground. The blood of the 3 mythological beasts and 7 heavenly human tribe great generals had already spilled into the sky. Soon it would be the heavenly gods' turn. The god-slaying team's performance had them gasping in amazement. This was the power of the god-slaying team. They were able to kill Tao integration stage enemies one after another. This was the grandest execution scene in the world. All the powers that stood on the side of the human race, or those that stood on the neutral side, were all cheering loudly. However, the powers that stood on the opposing side of the human race and sided with the heavenly human tribe were having a hard time. Stars. Didn't they say that the heavenly gods were invincible? Why are they all being beaten to such a sorry state? How can they be the embodiment of the heavenly gods? Don't be so hasty. Don't you see that the heavenly human tribe heavenly gods have already gained the upper hand? It's hard to say who will win. What the *CK? The Divine Phoenix Maiden, Dark Thunder Emperor, and Chaotic Element Martial Lord have already made their move. Do the heavenly gods still have a chance of winning? All the powerful beings from the Void Spirit Realm, Creation Realm, and Dark Marshlands stared at the broadcast with fear in their hearts. Chills ran down their spines, and their expectations of the heavenly gods became lower and lower. There was no chance of winning at all. The god-slaying team was simply too powerful. There were still many powerful beings stationed at the front lines, and these were only the executioners that had been left to spare. However, their ferocity was already enough to strike fear into everyone's hearts. This time, they had slain the heavenly gods and mythological beasts in the broadcast. What about next time? Where would they aim their blades at? If they aimed their blades at one of their forces, would they be able to defend themselves? It was clear that some powerful beings were already panicking. They had chosen to side with the heavenly human tribe in order to survive. However, if they were destroyed by the combined forces of the human race and the heaven-crushing sect before the battle concluded, then what was the point of choosing this side? The heavenly gods definitely still have trump cards that they haven't used yet. Let's continue watching. That's right. The heavenly gods aren't that easy to defeat. Let's continue watching the broadcast. I want to see these arrogant ants being trampled by the heavenly gods with my own eyes. There were still some living beings that wore expressions of indignation as they stared at the broadcast. However, right at this moment, the screen on which the intense battle was taking place suddenly turned black. All the living beings on the Tai Chu continent fell into a momentary daze as they stared at the blank screen. Chapter 1689. When a person was watching the live broadcast and was at the most exciting moment, the screen suddenly turned black. What kind of experience is this? Moreover, this live broadcast was the grandest and most desirable one in history. To a certain extent, it would determine the future of live broadcasts. Just like that, its screen suddenly went black, seeking the size of the shadow in the heart of the viewer. All of the 4-9 Immortal Sect powerful beings watching the livestream exploded. The tens of millions of experts who were watching the broadcast outside the grassland also exploded. All of the living beings on the Tai Chu continent who were watching the broadcast also exploded. Holy sh*t. What was going on? Why can't I see anything? I want to see what happens next. Hurry up and broadcast it. I haven't seen the heroic scene of Sect Master and Lin angrily beheading a celestial deity. I also want to see what happens next. The Heaven Emperor was pressed down on the ground by a heavenly deity, and the scene was extremely bloody. What exactly happened next? My little heart can't take it anymore. Many people with obsessive-compulsive disorder were in unbearable pain at this moment. Some even grabbed the floor. This was a world-class, large-scale, violent scene. Billions of creatures were going crazy. Some of them beat their chests and stamped their feet, some cursed loudly, some opened their mouths to beg, and all sorts of emotions were displayed in the human world. As for the culprit, it wasn't Bai Ling. Instead, it was Tina who was in the divine mirror world. She did not feel guilty about it at all. Instead, she felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Tina's divine mirror world was going to evolve once again, and this was going to be an unprecedented evolution. Hence, she couldn't allow this secret to be leaked to the outside world. This was an instinctive act of self-preservation. Meanwhile, within the divine mirror world, the enemy only had 5 heavenly gods left. However, these 5 heavenly gods were the most important targets for Enlin and the others. The God Massacre team was here to kill the 5 of them. Rumble, both the sky and the earth began to shake violently. All the living beings were indescribably shocked. The Empyrean deities were extremely sensitive to the changes in the world. Their faces all changed. My spiritual aura has broken through the bottleneck, and my vitality has become denser. My quality is also increasing rapidly. This sudden change has covered the entire world, and the great Tao of heaven and earth has become more complete. It seems to have the aura of eternity. The world is going to level up? Damn it, why is it happening now? Don't worry, it's not necessarily a bad thing for us. The Empyrean gods all had different expressions on their faces. As they fought, they thought about how to escape. The world continued to level up, and the battles never stopped. Bang! A deafening explosion resounded. The celestial Dharch let out a muffled groan as he was hammered into the ground again. Heavenly God Long Kuei, who had already activated his 8th divine halo, stared expressionlessly at the celestial Dharch. If it weren't for the fact that I needed time to activate my divine halo, you would have died a long time ago, Heavenly God Long Kuei said in an indifferent voice. The celestial Dharch threw up a mouthful of blood before slowly rising to his feet with a disdainful and provocative look in his eyes. What's the point of saying so much? Why don't you activate your 9th divine halo? Heavenly God Long Kuei's pupils contracted slightly. Do you think I wouldn't dare? After awakening their 9th divine halo, divine heaven stage heavenly humans would obtain extremely terrifying power. But at the same time, they would suffer an irreversible backlash and die on the spot. At this moment, he had already activated his 8th divine ring, and had long since made preparations to activate his 9th divine ring. On the battlefield between Enlin and the heavenly reality god, Enlin quickly pulled out his evil-slaying sword from behind his back. The inky black evil-slaying sword melded into the night sky in an extremely natural manner. Countless black veined patterns appeared beneath his feet and quickly spread through the air like a spiderweb, but they were extremely intricate and beautiful. Each and every black veined pattern was imbued with extremely profound Tao true intent. Enlin had unleashed the 5th technique of the 6 strikes of the war god, Tao Sword. Countless black veined patterns were independent, but they were also intertwining with one another. At the center of the countless intertwining Tao, Enlin stood proudly in his white robe, as if he were the ruler of all Tao. This was the technique Enlin had used to slay the heavenly mountain god. Now that his cultivation base had increased explosively, the power of this technique was even more terrifying than before. The heavenly mountain god had been unable to block this attack, and now that the heavenly reality god had been severely weakened, how was it going to block this attack? I can see your Tao. This is the final attack. A black and white light flashed in Enlin's eyes. It was as if he could see through heaven and earth, through time and through the essence of Tao. The heavenly Tao is boundless and Tao techniques are boundless. I have a sword that can sever all Tao in this world. Not only did this sword completely unleash the power of the Tao sword of the 6 strikes of the war god, but it was also infused with his heaven-crushing true intent. Normal Tao swords were unable to sever the heavenly reality god's Tao. However, the Tao sword infused with heaven-crushing true intent could even shatter the heavenly Tao. This time, the heavenly reality god finally felt a real sense of danger. Furthermore, it was a danger of destruction and death. Wu Ming, Long Kuei, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and attack. The heavenly reality god yelled in a panic. Wu Ming and Long Kuei had already activated their divine halos as quickly as they could. However, now that they had activated their 8th divine halo, they were unable to insta-kill the enemy in front of them and rush over to their rescue. A divine light erupted from the heavenly reality god's body. The white ball shuddered violently, and an extremely coarse, white humanoid object shot out from its body. It spat out a mouthful of water, and the words Enlin appeared above the white humanoid object's head. An indescribably beautiful light began to shine upon the coarse humanoid object, making it appear extremely lifelike. Even Enlin in the sky felt like the humanoid object beside the white ball was another Enlin. No, it should be the same Enlin die. Even if I have to pay the price of a severe backlash, I will kill you. The heavenly reality god roared in a crazed manner. The power of the divine halo above its head surged explosively, as if it had broken through some kind of limit. Enlin felt as if there was some kind of connection between them. Is this the power of karma? No, it's even more terrifying than the power of karma. It can invert reality and illusion. It can make something that doesn't exist in one's heart become real. Without any hesitation, he slashed his sword toward the heavenly reality god. The billions of black-veined patterns beneath his feet transformed into billions of streaks of Tao power, which shot toward the heavenly reality god. At the same time, a sharp blade that could slice through everything landed on the white ball. Ha ha! Enlin, die! The heavenly reality god was still laughing loudly. Then, as if it had been struck dumb, it controlled the countless black satellites around its body to shoot toward the white humanoid object before it. The object was instantly riddled with holes, as if it were a hornet's nest. In the next instant, the heavenly reality god's body was sliced in half by the Tao sword. For some reason, Enlin appeared where the white humanoid object was. Its body had already been riddled with tens of thousands of bloody holes, from which blood was gushing forth. Chapter 1690. Everything had happened far too suddenly. There was no way to evade, and there was no time to defend. It was as if the heavenly reality god's die, Enlin's sentence had already been cast in stone. An indescribable pain radiated from Enlin's entire body. Blood flowed profusely, and not a single part of his body was left unscathed, including his handsome face. Ha ha! Aren't you very cocky? Do you know the taste of death? The two halves of the heavenly reality god's body began to slowly fuse back together. Die, die, die. Its voice was like a heavenly decree that struck Enlin's body, causing his bodily functions to rapidly deteriorate under a mysterious power. I am reality. If I want you to die, then you shall be in a state of death. Above the heavenly reality god, the light from the divine halo was still flashing crazily. An incomparably dazzling and beautiful light shone upon Enlin's body. However, it was as if the divine halo was a man-eating demon that was about to devour Enlin. Enlin used his heaven-crushing true intent to defend himself. His entire body trembled, but the evil-slaying sword in his hand did not fall. The power of the Tao sword did not stop either. It was still madly grinding away at the heavenly reality God's Tao. Countless black Tao patterns crawled onto the heavenly reality God's body, pulling at the two halves of its body that it was trying to fuse back together. Although the Tao of truth, which eclipsed all other Tao in this world, was supreme and stood at the pinnacle of all Tao, it had already become extremely weak at this moment. I've already seen your Tao. Enlin's body was already drenched in blood, yet his eyes still blazed with a boundless battle intent. He gripped his sword tightly and unleashed all of his strength as he slashed toward the heavenly reality God. The black sword blade sliced through the void and struck an invisible Tao pattern. Crack, crack, crack. The sword blade hovered in the void in front of the heavenly reality God, as if it was tearing something apart. An extremely discordant sound rang out. This was the sound of Tao patterns being sliced apart. At the same time, the countless Tao patterns below were also attacking the heavenly reality God's Tao under Enlin's command. The heavenly reality God was in a panic. It was intimidated by Enlin's terrifying life force. It had clearly paid the price of a violent backlash to unleash an extremely powerful attack from the heavenly reality God. Why was Enlin still able to resist it? What kind of abnormal vitality was this? What it didn't know was that Enlin was actually holding on through sheer willpower. Enlin was very indignant. It could have crushed the other party, but why was the other party almost instantly killed when it exploded? This was completely unfair. The heavenly reality God had to die. The heavenly reality God was also scared. Its Tao patterns were starting to crack. If this continued, it would really be finished. It immediately changed its strategy. As if its words were the law, it immediately opened its mouth and said anxiously, "Void. Void. Void. Sh." Enlin suddenly sensed his power becoming illusory once again. A supreme power of laws wanted to erase his power from this world. The heavenly reality God wielded the power of reality, yet it was using its power of reality to negate Enlin's attack. This was the heavens. This was the gods. They could do whatever they wanted with just their mouth. Enlin's body surged with extremely powerful heaven-crushing true intent, and his expression didn't change in the slightest as he slashed down with the evil-slaying sword with all his might. Let's see if your illusory form is faster or if my sword slashes are faster. Enlin's veins bulged as he used up the last of his power. The heavenly reality God's divine halo was already even more dazzling than the sun in the sky. This was the scene of the heavenly God unleashing all of its powers, and it completely engulfed Enlin's body. Crack! A crisp crack reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The evil-slaying sword slashed through the air in a pitch-black arc before falling powerlessly to the ground. The Tao patterns dissipated. The two halves of the orb that had been sliced in half were no longer able to regenerate, and they fell to the ground once again. That perfect and beautiful divine halo had lost all of its color. It was like a beautiful jade that had been petrified and then turned into dust. It shattered and dissipated into the air. I won. Enlin's body swayed slightly, and he started to fall toward the ground. The evil-slaying sword flashed. An extremely adorable loli in a black dress with a round face appeared before Enlin. She stretched out her fair arms and placed him on the ground. "What a lousy win," a cold and tender voice sounded. Enlin couldn't help but smile at the sight of the adorable loli before him. He wanted to reach out and rub little Xie's head, only to find that he didn't even have the strength to raise his hand. Right at this moment, an extremely powerful healing light descended from the sky and struck his body. This power was as warm as a spring breeze, and the pain inflicted by Enlin's injuries was greatly alleviated. "Enlin, how did you become like this in the blink of an eye?" Su Xiaolan flew toward Enlin, and her eyes were filled with urgency and anxiety. She maintained her healing spell technique with one hand, and she pulled out a few immortal pills with her other hand, which she stuffed into Enlin's mouth without any hesitation. Enlin's battle seemed to have taken a long time to describe, but it actually happened extremely quickly. Furthermore, the entire process was extremely perilous. Su Xiaolan had just slain the heavenly human tribe great general and rushed over from afar, only to witness Enlin slaying the heavenly god. It was already too late for her to rush over to assist Enlin. Thankfully, she still had a chance to act as a healer. Enlin swallowed 3 immortal pills, and his injuries were finally stabilized. The bloody holes all over his body were healing at a rate discernible to the naked eye. However, there wasn't much joy on his face. Instead, there was a hint of confusion. He had just slain the heavenly reality god. Logically speaking, he should be able to obtain the power of the heavenly god of reality, right? But why wasn't the system reacting at all? Enlin was in a panic. He was still thinking of using the power of the heavenly god of reality to increase his combat prowess. But now there was nothing. He felt as if he had fought for nothing. Of course, he couldn't fight for nothing. He had killed a powerful enemy for the human race, so how could he fight for nothing? It was also at this moment that a mystical power imbued with the paramount Tao pierced through the heavens, attempting to return to the Tai Chu continent's heavenly Tao. However, it was obstructed by the divine mirror world. That power was continuously ravaged and analyzed. It was even poured into the boundless sky and filtered once. Only then did it reluctantly let go. Initially, it didn't want to let it go. However, it was afraid that it would suffer backlash from the Tai Chu continent, so it decided to let it go. Enlin and the other heavenly gods were completely unaware of this. The only one who knew was Tina. All of the mighty figures were basking in joy at the death of a heavenly god. Ha ha! As expected of the war god of the celestial court. The celestial Tharch laughed heartily as he vomited blood from heavenly god Long Kuei's hammer. Very good. The first heavenly god has fallen, and he definitely won't be the last. The chaotic element martial lord charged toward heavenly goddess Wu Ming with a murderous intent. As expected of the god-slaying team's team leader, Mr. Enlin. I have to hurry up as well. The battling Buddha's battle intent soared into the sky, and he swung his golden-banded staff through the air to shatter the terrifying dream realms that were surging toward him. The morale of Enlin's allies was greatly boosted. On the contrary, the heavenly gods were already in a state of rage due to the death of the heavenly reality god. Ninth Divine Halo activate. Heavenly god Long Kuei's eyes turned crimson, and a divine halo suddenly appeared above his head. Chapter 1691. Enlin, the celestial Tharch, and the others were startled. The ninth divine halo of the celestial god stage had finally appeared. A divine halo imbued with boundless white light appeared above heavenly god Long Kuei's head. Wait, why is it white? Enlin's pupils constricted slightly as he felt puzzled. When he was battling heavenly goddess Lin Yu and heavenly god Jordan, their ninth divine halos were clearly black. At this moment, an extremely terrifying aura soared into the sky. The celestial Tharch, who was closest to heavenly god Long Kuei, was knocked back several kilometers. An incomparably holy light radiated from the divine ring, radiating to every corner of the world. It contained great benevolence and great hope, as if it was the origin of all things, the beginning of everything. Heavenly god Long Kuei's expression, which had been filled with rage due to the heavenly reality god's death, gradually became calm and emotionless. The celestial Tharch was naturally not going to give him a chance to flex, and he lunged toward heavenly god Long Kuei at an even faster speed before unleashing over 10,000 punches in the blink of an eye. Heaven-crushing lotus explosion fist. As the golden fist descended, a lotus actually formed. The lotus flower blossomed, and a terrifying destructive power erupted forth, threatening to engulf heavenly god Long Kuei. Each of the lotus flowers contained the celestial Thearcha's extremely terrifying heaven-crushing true intent. The celestial Tharch was an extremely talented individual. If he joined the heaven-crushing sect, he would gain another heavenly disciple position. Even though he hadn't joined the heaven-crushing sect yet, he had received all of the heaven-crushing sect's true inheritances. When he unleashed the full power of the heaven-crushing sect, he would possess the power of a heavenly disciple. His fists blossomed with lotuses, each one illuminating the mountains and rivers, shocking the world. Heavenly god Long Kuei was surrounded by countless destructive lotus flowers, and the muscles on his right arm suddenly bulged as the white light between heaven and earth suddenly dimmed. No, it should be said that the light had flowed into his right arm. Fist of light. Long Kuei turned around and punched toward the celestial Tharch. Fist against fist. At this moment, boundless light erupted from heavenly god Long Kuei's fist. There was no earth-shattering collision as expected. The Sky Emperor's lotus flowers withered in an instant. They couldn't even let out a fart. The celestial Thearcha's expression changed drastically, and he immediately used his heaven-crushing true will to protect himself. Heaven-crushing armor. Immediately afterward, the light shot toward the celestial Tharch. The celestial Thearcha's armor instantly cracked, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood as he was sent flying for tens of thousands of meters. Even though he had been pummeled by heavenly god Long Kuei before, none of those attacks had dealt any serious damage. However, all of the meridians within his body had been destroyed by that fist of light, and even his vital energy had been sucked dry. No, rather than saying that it was sucked dry, it would be more accurate to say that the origin chi in his body had sensed the power outside and actually rushed out of his body like a flock of ducks, rushing towards that power without a care for anything. The celestial Tharch was clearly the master of the vital energy, but heavenly god Long Kuei had turned the tables and unleashed a technique against the celestial Tharch, thereby forcing the vital energy within the celestial Thearcha's body to submit to him. The others on the battlefield felt their scalps going numb upon seeing this. Radiant fist. Unlin murmured. He could not help but recall the two heavenly gods of the South Heaven Gate. The ninth divine halo of those two heavenly gods was darkness. Heavenly god Long Kuei's ninth divine halo was light. What was surprising to everyone was that after wounding the celestial Tharch, heavenly god Long Kuei did not press his advantage. Instead, he turned toward a certain direction. That's right, he was looking at Unlin. Unlin's entire body was riddled with wounds, and he almost let loose a torrent of abuse. F***ck, the celestial Tharch is still alive and kicking. Why are you looking at me? You no longer have any combat prowess left, so this is the best opportunity to kill you. Heavenly god Long Kuei looked at Unlin with a cold expression before charging toward him. Oh well, I've become the target again. Unlin was extremely exhausted, but there was nothing he could do. Who asked him to be so bad *SS? Save me. Heavenly god Long Kuei is coming to take the back line. Please protect me. Unlin summoned his teammates with all his might. Su Xiaolan wielded her dragon sparrow sword and stood firmly in front of Unlin. However, this was not enough. Su Xiaolan was completely unable to stop heavenly god Long Kuei. Mr. Unlin, let me lend you a hand. A divine tree over 100,000 feet tall flew over from the distance. Its massive canopy obscured the entire sky, and countless vines transformed into a series of massive green dragons that pounced toward heavenly god Long Kuei. Patriarch Shinting was in high spirits after swallowing the primordial demonic bear. However, heavenly god Long Kuei didn't even look at him before unleashing another simple punch. F***ck off. Boundless light erupted from his fist, instantly withered all of the vines, and some of them even transformed into green particles of light before disappearing on the spot. The power of the fist tore through everything in its path, and a gargantuan hole was blasted into the massive trunk of the divine tree. Everything was reduced to particles of light as the light passed through the tree. Patriarch Shin Ting's massive tree trunk was sliced in half, and he let loose a wail of agony. This was the first time he had been sliced in half by an enemy. This powerful being, who had once brought nightmares to the primordial demonic bear, was unable to withstand a single attack from Heavenly God Long Kuei. Heavenly God Long Kuei was just about to unleash another punch toward Patriarch Shin Ting to kill him. At this moment, a white figure with boundless battle intent hurtled toward him at an astonishing speed. This was one of the 3 founding elders of the Holy Martial Clan's Holy Palace of Martial Dao, the Chaotic Element Martial Lord. Extreme Holy Sun Fist. The Chaotic Element Martial Lord unleashed his most powerful technique right from the get-go. His fist was like a massive platinum sun, and it was imbued with a peculiar sense of holiness and holiness. Heavenly God Long Kuei's brows furrowed slightly, and he finally stopped in his tracks before unleashing a fist toward the Chaotic Element Martial Lord. Bam! An earth-shattering collision ensued. The massive platinum sun was knocked flying by Heavenly God Long Kuei's fist, but Heavenly God Long Kuei's body was also knocked back slightly, clearly having been affected by his opponent's power. He had stalled him. The Chaotic Element Martial Lord had a chance to stall his opponent. At this moment, Dongfang Zhuangshi and Emperor Ziwei also rushed toward Heavenly God Long Kuei to stall him. Anlin was extremely touched upon seeing this. His teammates were still very supportive. They would not abandon him and leave him alone. All he had to do was stall for time. Once the time was up, Heavenly God Long Kuei would be struck by the backlash of the Heavenly Dao and perish. However, before Anlin had a chance to heave a sigh of relief, an extremely terrifying ripple erupted from another direction, and a white light threatened to engulf everything between heaven and earth. Black Spirit Snake and White Spirit Snake were both knocked flying by the terrifying sword projection. Heavenly Goddess Wu Ming looked at Anlin with a cold expression. Anlin, you're not going to live. Die now. She also charged toward Anlin as she spoke. F***CK. Does Heavenly Goddess Wu Ming have a death wish? Anlin's body shuddered. Both heavenly gods had unleashed their 9th divine halos, and both of them wanted to kill him.